Tucker Carlson in his current guise, which is a much more conspiratorial guise than he's had before, has become more and more dominant figure. As you note, Candace Owens' success has been startling. I guess I'd ask this question in two dimensions. What is the audience demand that they are meeting, right? What is it that they are providing that people want? And then I guess the second question is, why do you think you'll win?
Yeah, great question. So
why is it so bad that you have to sell your wealth to pay for it? Well, because, I mean, basically you'd have this whole weird system of, like, the stock market would be a lot more influx with people selling off chunks of their portfolio just to pay a tax on it. There are some positive arguments to that, too. Maybe having more volume flowing or unlocking people's older funds up for investment, maybe. But I think the big things would be, like, imagine people eyeing like Amazon or eyeing Tesla or whatever, and you think there's going to be some huge ownership changes coming because you know that the owners have to start selling off like big chunks of their ownership to pay a wealth tax. And then imagine also like you have to sell off chunks of your business to pay a wealth tax, and then imagine the value of your business like decreases over time, and then you never actually get to even sell your business and realize like the whole gain itself. So you were just like paying taxes on a thing you never even really got to enjoy the income from. It's just, I don't know, it's just like, it's messy. And then that doesn't even get into the whole, like, how do you value any of these things also to assess taxes towards them, which is a whole fucking thing. So,
first of all, the audience for conspiracy theories is enormous. Before his kind of legal trouble, someone like Alex Jones was making apparently millions of dollars selling vitamins and survival supplies. And if you think about it, to generate that kind of revenue requires a massive, if kind of quiet, under the surface audience. And so I think they're really tapping into that side of the audience. It's right-wing, but not exclusively right-wing. And in fact, a lot of the people who have come over to these conspiracy theories are in that part of the horseshoe where their politics are, let's say, sub-ideological. They're more of a feeling, a perception, a set of resentments. Second, how do conspiracy theories work?
Would you agree then that for unrealized gains, you can't use them for collateral like Elon Musk does? Like, if you really want, I think you can make it so that you can only take out a loan against like realized appreciated assets, I guess, if you want. But this is like such a minor problem. People think that this is like a huge problem in the economy. We're not really losing much tax revenue. Like,
Dan said this almost never happens.
Yeah, it's not really a huge thing. People act like every fucking billionaire is doing these huge tax loophole dodges on this shit, but it's not. It's pretty insignificant.
Conspiracy theories work for people who want to forfeit agency, for people who do not see the possibility of constructive action in their personal lives or in public life. And therefore, the conspiracy theory gives them the rationalization and justification for their nihilism. It's, insert here, right? It's this group, it's that group, it's this other group that is controlling the world, making everything impossible, assassinating our heroes. And this gives them a psychological key, right? That is self-reinforcing, because a conspiracy theory for conspiracy theorists can never be debunked, right? It's just one layer of the onion that gets peeled. And I'll tell you why I think we're going to win. Because I've noticed this, even for people, let's say, in my kind of one degree of separation, conspiracy theories, and I think in particular anti-Semitic conspiracy theories, eventually fry your brain. And so I think that we'll see a lot of these personalities, a lot of these psychological tendencies kind of burn out on their own. And on top of that, as a kind of extra layer of
That is an optimistic view on the history of anti-Semitism right there.
Yeah, well, okay, I'm saying in the near term, these things kind of wax and wane, but I think what I've seen in the United States is a greater set of antibodies than you might find elsewhere. And then institutionally for our side on the right, I think that, look, the people who run institutions are aware of the problem, they're confronting the problem, we're dealing with it. And to me, this is inevitable. Political coalitions are going to have some kind of mixture of the good and the bad. And the question is, who's in a position of leadership? What kind of courage and...
Where does the majority of tax income come from, though? My guess is probably from income tax for the U.S. government. That'd be it must be, right? Because it's not like we don't have there's no federal sales tax, so it must be, right?
Integrity they have, and can they succeed? And so I think that when I look at the field as it is, I think this, say, faction.
How do we get to a point to where the likes of Bezos are paying more than 1% of their wealth growth? I don't think we should worry about taxing wealth growth that much. It's not a very rich avenue for tax income. You're just not going to make much money doing it. The problem with tax policy is a lot of people just don't seem to care much about like raising money for the government. They're just like looking at it as like a retribution for people that they think are too wealthy. Can you cite anything that billionaires get normal loans like us peons? It seems from the data they don't, because they just keep getting richer in this K economy. Every wealthy person will simply get wealthier. Every single person will just get, every wealthy person, it doesn't matter if you ban this type of loan or not, just once you have wealth and access, you're always going to have more wealth and access. So you're not going to be able to tax your way around that. But why not is the question. If people are rich and we can get that money, what's the downside? Well, the downside is that it would be costly to implement a wealth tax. It would probably affect a lot of people that you wouldn't want affected by it. So business owners that don't have like massive net worths, you could like cap this, or I'm sorry, you could make it so that it only starts until you have like a certain wealth level. I think Bernie Sanders and I think Elizabeth Warren especially were like over $100 million or $1 billion in wealth, you get taxed more or something. But it's like, now you're talking about affecting such a small part of society. You're just not raising much money. And trying to do this, it's just so much political capital at nothing. You're not like, why waste all of this time on such an ineffective tax when what we could just do is like get rid of the Trump Tax Cuts and Jobs Act? That would give us so much more revenue for the government, so much more money.
Would it really?
Like,
were we like near
like $500 billion a year or something? Like,
that's a lot of money.
Yes. And when we're talking about like the most aggressive types of wealth taxes you can think of, I think we're on the scale of raising maybe like 10 to 30 billion a year. Maybe these would be, you would have finagle them. They would be very complicated. They would be difficult to implement. They'd be difficult to collect on. It would just be a fucking nightmare to do this shit. Whereas like just bumping all of your rates a few points is netting you like 600 billion extra in tax revenue. It's insane how much more money. It's insane how much more money you would make for the government.
Yeah, it's like a scale of economy or whatever.
Is less powerful than it was 6 months ago, a year ago, and I hope that trend continues.
I think there's an interesting question on institutions in the right here. I forget if it's a Chesterton quote or a C.S. Lewis quote, but one of them says that when men stop believing in God, they don't believe in nothing. When men stop believing in God, they believe in everything. And I do think there's a dimension of that around institutions where the right has become much more anti-institutional. I think the view that
Ezra made it sound like billionaires taking low interest loans out on unrealized assets is the primary reason they're able to compound their wealth. What? That's definitely not true. So I don't know when he said that or whatever, but
institutions cannot be neutral and largely cannot even be impartial is much more widely held, and there's been a sort of coordinated attack on
Destiny. You're undervaluing propaganda wins hugely. Doing that would absolutely be a massive win in perception. Yeah, I mean, I guess, but like I'm kind of like, I like effective policy for if you're just looking for like things that look good, I guess people like punishing billionaires or whatever. But in terms of, I guess, like delivering on material conditions and all that, I feel like it would be better to do. But you know,
Dave Ramsey says Congress has a spending problem. Do you agree, Destiny?
I mean, I don't know. It depends on how you view it, right? Like I DoorDash everything every single fucking day, but like you could argue I have a spending problem, but I have the money to pay for it, right? If you have enough money that you're getting from your tax receipts, from your revenue, then you can spend whatever you want. If you don't have enough money, then
the argument would be like if the budget isn't balanced, then they don't have the money.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I think Congress spends more than it should, probably more than it should, based on the amount of money that it makes. But then the question is do you cut spending, so like austerity measures?
What are you going to cut?
Or do you raise revenue, like increasing taxes? And bumping up the tax brackets a few points, I don't think would significantly impact anybody that negatively. But like all these weird esoteric taxes would be so much fighting politically, and it'd be so much conversation, and it would do so little to actually help us at the end of the day for anything. It's just such a fucking waste of time. Not a troll question, but do you think that what? Do you think that labor should pay a higher tax rate? Why do you say not a troll question? Some of you guys trigger the fuck out of me. God. Do you think that labor should pay a higher tax rate than long-term capital gains? Personally, not really. No. I feel like I don't like the disparity between capital gains and like employment taxes. It does feel weird that some guy can go and bust his ass at McDonald's for 40 hours a week, and then he has to pay the ordinary tax rates, and then I can have like millions of dollars sitting in NVIDIA stock, and then I only have to pay 15% as long as I think, right? There might be a second bracket, but I don't think I'm in that one yet. The fact that the capital gains rates are so much lower, I think it's I don't know, you could probably make more money there too, but what were you saying?
I was going to ask, do you think that we should have like another tax bracket? Because right now it goes up to 625K. How many people earn over 625K a year, though? How many people?
Probably not that many, would be my guess. Very few. Most of that is probably going to start being like stock compensation or just appreciation and other things. Yeah. What should the Dems' messaging look like if it were to increase the income tax rate? I don't just argue the numbers. I don't know. That's a political strategy question. It's a different thing.
Many of the institutions in American life, but sort of new ones haven't emerged, right? You could imagine the right and the left having parallel institutions that have different...
Hold on, this is retarded. Everybody says this. You tax things you want less of, so taxing labor is the easiest, but the thing you actually want to tax the least. That's not necessarily true. Sometimes you tax things that you absolutely need so that you know that you'll always have the taxes there, right? So like one of the reasons why taxing income is nice is because people always want to make more money, so they'll always do things to make more money, regardless of if you tax it. So you can tax it because people will keep doing it. Now, if you really want less of a thing, you can have things like, like your sin taxes, where it's like, okay, we really want less of this, so we're going to start putting a hefty tax on that. But like, you don't necessarily just tax things because you just want to get rid of it out of society. You want less of it. That's just generally when you tax a thing, you get less of it. When you subsidize a thing, you get more of it. These are just general rules of them.
Oh, talking about economics, I had an idea earlier because I'm a genius.
Okay. Wait.
Someone
Hold this up. Let me get a Red Bull. One second.
What a shitty week turning into a good week. Show haircut? I haven't gotten it yet. It's at 3:30. I had to go with my wife to the fucking airport. See her off, whatever. Because I'm a good husband. What happened to my account? Tell the story. It's unbanned. That's all you need to know. That's all anybody needs to know. And that's all I'm ever going to say about it. What I had to do to a man in Dubai is between me and him. And the camel. But that's it. That's it. Why was it banned? I'm not actually sure. I didn't get an email. I never got an email of why. Am I looking for a new editor? Physics will be staying on. He's my little boy. He's been my YouTube editor, doing all of my projects for fucking years. He just... I'm not mad at him. He was prioritizing getting the content out as quickly as possible versus making sure everything was quote-unquote family friendly. And now he understands that he and I won't get any money if the channel isn't, around. But I am going to cut his pay to $1 a month. That's just business. That's just good business. That's good business. Deserved, yeah. Good benefits? If he ever got banned in DGG chat, I'd unban him. That's good benefit. J Doctor is gone. Can you either unmute me or give me his Discord so I can continue threatening him? I'll unmute you. This motherfucker is not getting a Red Bull. He went to buy one. He actually might have. Oh my god, bruh. He's using me again. Oh.
Why are you saying,
Where's the Red Bull?
Right here. How do you know I'm coming back? If I'm streaming my game to you and...
You're not streaming anything, retard.
Really?
I've had to been watching your fucking YouTube, your actual Kick channel. Because I didn't want to...
Good. I'm glad.
Ask.
Good.
Now I gotta leave in 15 minutes to get a haircut, and then I'll be back.
Oh, I thought you were getting a haircut earlier, so you lied about...
No, I didn't go get a haircut earlier. I went with my wife to the airport.
Really?
Yeah. She's going to hang out with Penta in Austin and go to his 4th of July party.
Wow. Why don't you go to a 4th of July party?
It's like, just, I love Penta, but I'm making Dosh right now. And if I don't stream, then I don't make money. You know what I'm saying?
Gotcha.
He gets it.
Because I do agree with you, actually, that institutions they do always have values at their heart. And when you don't think they do, it just means you don't know what they are.
Correct.
But I think a
Or
lot,
they're being deliberately obscured,
or
right?
they're being
as a
obscured.
tactic.
But I think sometimes about, I
Wait,
think
I
Tucker
had a
Carlson is an
thought.
interesting figure here. Somebody who
Oh,
came
I remember my thought.
What?
You tried to fool me. Someone linked me an article earlier that 2 egg companies were found like colluding during the egg fucking crisis to like keep prices up or whatever. I think fines aren't enough, and if you're found to be doing this by the United States government, I think your assets get seized and then sold.
Damn.
I won't say it doesn't need to be nationalized, but I think that would be the true, like, you don't want to do this. And then you can go to Tyson, because fuck them.
Sure.
All right, good.
I think you should get I don't know about asset seized, but the fines should be like hefty. Like it
It
can't
was
be
like $5 million.
no shot. Wait, really?
That was the fine, yeah.
Like, it can't
$5
be
million
that
had to do eggs.
You have to stand to lose like 50x or 100x because you have
Whatever
to
you gain,
consider
yeah.
that Destiny is wrong. Billionaires taking low interest loans on unrealized gains is a huge tax. You can go and read articles. I read articles. This is not that much. I think like
Dan
at its
asked
most.
his billionaire friend and said this isn't a thing. So.
Well, I forget. Well, I mean, it is a thing. You can get these loans.
Doesn't
You
it?
can go to
Yeah.
Wells Fargo.
Well, not like en masse, not en masse.
Oh, sure. It's not. You're just not losing much tax revenue for it. And if you do any, I think somebody even posted a thing on the subreddit where they went because they didn't believe me or whatever. And I think like at its most generous, you would lose like, I think maybe like you'd get a one-time collection of $40 billion, and then past that, you'd either get nothing or like a low figure, like 1 billion or something, if that. It's just not. You're just not losing much tax revenue. Wait, what did you just say before that?
You were about to say that it needs to be 50
Oh.
times whatever they gained, or
You
it's
have
just
to
cost
keep
of
in
doing
mind
business.
that
Yeah.
whatever you're doing, when for crime, there's going to be some percentage of crime, maybe most crime goes uncaught. So
Yeah.
like if one person is scamming, there's probably like 10 scammers that you didn't catch. I guess it probably depends on the type of crime, but like so that means that your fines need to be adjusted appropriately. So let's say for instance that you get fined 2 times the amount of anything that you do wrong, right? So if you make $10 million, you get fined $20 million. That's if you made that 10 million illegally, right? Or through some kind of scam. If that was the case, and there are 10 times the amount of people doing it, well, then that's still like an EV positive strategy. You should, right? If you have a 1/10 chance of getting caught, and then the fine is only 2x times, like it should be the percentage chance of getting caught has to correspond to the amount of the fine. Does that make sense, what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, 100%. Because otherwise, it's literally, well, we'll just get a fine.
Yeah,
Because
it's
we're gonna
EV
make so much
positive.
money
You should be
this
doing it. You
otherwise.
should be
Yeah.
scamming or defrauding people because it's worth it, like monetarily to do so.
It's why, you know, the drug smugglers or whatever, you know, they're paying the people like 100K, but like they're expecting half of them to get fucking caught or whatever,
Sure.
and they're still priced in.
Yeah. And then you should be also, I don't know why criminal things wouldn't attach here. So, do you think wealthy people are significantly dodging taxes using tricks like trusts? Yeah, I think trusts are probably used a lot. But I also think that one issue you have to keep in mind too is like, what are we when we say somebody's like dodging taxes, sometimes we use that to just mean that like a person is using the tax code like as intended. So like maybe it is the case that we do want to incentivize certain types of behaviors, like charitable donations are a thing that we probably want in society, right? That's good. We want people to be donating to charities. But then people will complain. It's like, oh, this guy donated to charity so much that he was able to reduce his tax footprint. It's like, but we want him to do that. That's why the tax code exists. So sometimes people get mad because people are using the tax code as intended and they call it like a loophole. So like in terms of how trusts function, there's a reason why they are structured the way they are in a tax manner. So it's, yeah, I don't know. What are you going to do? Destiny, they waited like a day before responding. Okay.
Up institutionally. I think sometimes about this speech he gave at the 2009 Conservative Political Action Conference.
And I saw conservatives create many of their own media organizations, and I saw many of those organizations
Holy
prosper, and I saw
shit,
some
what
of them
is this
fail.
video?
And here's the difference. The ones that failed refused to put accuracy first. This is the hard truth, and conservatives need to deal with this. I believe this. I'm as conservative as any person in this room. I'm literally in the process of stockpiling weapons and food and moving to Idaho. So I'm not in any way going to take a second seat to anybody in this room ideologically. But I will say, honestly, if you create a news organization whose primary objective is not to deliver accurate news, you will fail. You will fail. The New York Times is a liberal paper, but it's also, and it is to its core a liberal paper, it's also a paper that cares about whether they spell people's names right, by and large. It's a paper that actually cares about accuracy. Conservatives need to build institutions that mirror those institutions. That's the truth. You don't believe me?
So
New York Times?
put aside the special pleading from the New York Times here. Carlson tried to build his own media institution, the Daily Caller.
Sure.
I would say it did not my impression of it is that it did not become a place to put accuracy first and became a kind of conservative New York Times.
It did not become a
It did
conservative
not
New York
become a
Times.
conservative New York Times. Over time, he went in, I think, darker and darker directions as he chased the audience. And now he's fully without institution and has, I think, emerged, I'll put it this way, into a form I think when I listen to you, you find more concerning and problematic. So what do you think went wrong there?
Yeah, well, look, this is a long-term trend. This
get
didn't
here,
emerge
by the way.
in 2009 or 2020. I think of it this way. The left is over-institutionalized and the right is
I
under-institutionalized.
say this all the time, man. Left is overformed by institutions, the right is underformed.
Correct. And so we have kind of opposite
what that means,
problems. And I think of it also in this way. I wrote a piece about this, I don't know, a long time ago, and I think it really holds up. The left is organized as a capital P party, and the right is organized under a capital P prince. So you have Donald Trump essentially sets the direction of the right, for better or for worse, through personal charismatic power and his relationship with the conservative base.
Cold.
There's really no mediating institutions in the kind of way that you would see elsewhere. That's where conservatives have figured out this formula, for at least the time being, to achieve political victory. It has benefits, it has problems. The left has the opposite problem. The reason why I think you get like presidential candidates on the left that seem to be like devoid of traditional charisma is because it's organized as an institutional apparatus or a capital P party. And so conservatives have a problem with institutions. Conservatives have a problem building institutions. And this is the deepest irony, right? Is that conservatives in a healthy republic would be the ones that are preserving the institutions, restoring the institutions, maintaining the institutions. But conservatives have found themselves on the outside of institutions. And so when we're talking about this concept of counter-revolution, it's a paradox, right? Because a counter-revolution is not necessarily a conservative impulse on the top. You can have a conservative mission or goal that drives it. That's why it's a counter-revolution rather than a revolution. But conservatives are in this really interesting position where you have a lot of people on the intellectual right. They attend the black tie galas, they attend the events at the country club, they eat the salmon dinner at the whatever Hilton ballroom. And I'm always looking around at these. I don't like these events because I'm always looking around and saying, you guys are out of your minds. You guys are operating as if the Elks Lodge was still the formative institution of the United States. You're living in a fantasy. You're living in a nostalgia that isn't actually grappling with the fundamental problems in the country and is totally out of step with the very voters that you claim to represent. And so, look, this is a problem. I can't say that there's a snap your finger solution. And so you have to start where you start. I work for an institution that I think is the best in the business, the Manhattan Institute. I think we do good work that has a high degree of accuracy and rigor and intelligence. And I think that we've put up practical political victories in a way that few others have.
Another version of this is a line I like, is that the personality type of the left is bureaucratic and the personality type of the right is autocratic. And I don't think that was always true.
I don't think so. I don't think so.
I think in the Trump era it is.
Okay, well, make the case.
There is a falling in line behind Donald Trump. So here's my view of the two coalitions right now. The genius of Donald Trump in the 2024 election was he collapsed the multi-dimensional test of party loyalty that existed in the previous Republican Party, where you pro-life, did you believe in low taxes, what was your foreign policy, et cetera, and certainly the multi-dimensional agenda test you see on the left, down to a single point of loyalty. Did you support him personally? If you did, there was actually room for a wide variety of other opinions. You could be a techno-futurist, like Elon Musk. Yeah. You could be a Christian traditionalist. You could be RFK Jr., who'd been running as a Democrat just a year or two before.
Really?
But also you could be Ted Cruz. And what held that together is that the line that you could not cross was Trump himself. But as long as you were useful to him, you could be on the team. Now, that has obvious issues when you move into governance, and I think some of them have emerged. But it gave him and them a freedom of movement across other issues where, Kamala Harris, Tim Walz, Joe Biden were much more box checking, right? The sort of multi-dimensional loyalty test that the left uses. And so on the left, you end up with, and I mean here the left, not like the Democratic Social stuff, but the left coalition in this country, the broad Democratic Party. You end up with people who have sort of all of the right views and have an institutional personality, right? Are somewhat risk averse, are worried about getting in trouble at a meeting. And on the right, you have people who, they'll go crazy in a meeting. You can be Bill Pulte. But as long as the boss likes you, you're safe.
Okay, yeah, I think that there are elements of that are true. Prince versus party. It's a method of political organization, psychological organization. Certainly, one of Trump's kind of the great litmus test for him is personal loyalty. Like we've seen that. You're with Trump, he's with you. You cross him, and he'll attack you.
You could be Kim Jong Un and be a.
They were buddies, right?
Standing.
It was like a nice buddy comedy.
Yeah.
I feel like there'd be a buddy comedy.
He likes Kim Jong Un more than he likes Mark Carney.
Yeah, well,
How is that not authoritarian?
Fair enough, and as personal chemistry goes, but. Yeah, I think there's some truth to that, but I wouldn't therefore, I think your conclusion is overdrawn. I don't think you could say the right has autocratic personalities.
Really?
I mean, I deal with conservatives all the time. I don't see that as a psychological tendency. The people I work with, the people I talk to, my friends and neighbors. But so, yeah, I think it's overdrawn. I think this is just a question of political organization from the top. And I don't think it's total just loyalty, personal loyalty. I mean, Trump wants immigration restrictions, strong national borders, build a wall. He wants American national interest-based foreign policy, although that is kind of a little bit on the outs. And then he represents, or at least championed, a lot of the causes that I care about, on DEI, on higher education, on cultural institutions, and a whole host of other sub-issues that he really grabbed onto. And look, this is good. You kind of have to work with what is there. You always want to plan for the future, build for the future, but ultimately you're faced with decisions in the moment. And look, on the whole, I think in those areas where we have had more freedom of movement, more ability to execute policy, I think things have been going quite well.
I'm going to go back to Tucker. So I've seen you talk about your take on his evolution. And something you said is that the Tucker Carlson of the Fox News era, when he was given his APM monologues, that in that era, they were a unifying script for the right. That Fox News was this institutional structure around him that maybe contained him to a certain point. And that created a unity, a coherence that has now dissolved, not just around him specifically, but around the right more broadly. Now, the liberal take on Tucker in the Fox News era is that he was beginning to bring a white national strain into centrality in the Republican Party. That, there were all these Daily Stormer articles about how much he was saying exactly what they thought. He was talking about great replacement theory.
You've got to ask yourself, as you watch the historic tragedy that is Joe Biden's immigration policy, what's the point of this? They are flooding this country with immigrants in order to change the demography to maintain political power for themselves, to change the racial mix of the country. That's the reason, to reduce the political power of people whose ancestors lived here and dramatically increase the proportion of Americans newly arrived from the third world. Now, I know that the left and all the little gatekeepers on Twitter become literally hysterical if you use the term replacement, but they become hysterical because that's what's happening, actually. Let's just say it, that's true.
He had already, in our view, become quite conspiratorial, and that what he is now and what he is then are a straight line from each other, and that the sort of passions he was unleashing, right? Reason, of course, being a slave of such passions, that it was always going to go in one direction, and that celebrating what he was at that moment and then being confused by what he is at this moment is a kind of like a strange unwillingness to either grapple with one or the other. So tell me how you see it.
Yeah, I don't see it that way. I mean, when Tucker was on Fox at that 8 p.m. Eastern time, 5 p.m. Western time for me, it really did feel like a shelling point for the right. It was like a quarterback calling the plays every night at 8 o'clock in that first 5 to 10 minutes, where Tucker kind of condensed the opinion, represented the opinion, reflected back the opinion, and then everyone had a central coherent point to think about, to talk about, to mobilize on. And it was very effective.
Hey, what does that sound like?
So even in my own experience, when I first started reporting on critical race theory in the institutions, went on Tucker, gave a kind of opening monologue with Tucker. President Trump was watching it, got a call from the White House the next morning. Hey, the president saw you on TV. He wants to take action on critical race theory. Come to the White House. Let's get this thing done. And so that mechanism, that even in my personal experience, the loop on that was like less than 12 hours.
Very tight loop.
Very tight loop. And I think also what I've learned about Fox News is that Fox News has, and this is to its great credit, Fox News has a kind of disciplinary function. And I think especially after 2020 has become even more cognizant of, okay, message discipline is important. Moving the message forward is important. Here's the kind of guardrails for the narrative. And this is a function of institutions, a function of technology.
Yes, but what I'm talking about is what the narrative itself is. I agree with you that Tucker played this role when he was on Fox News. But the thing that many of us I knew Tucker before, many of us who had watched him for a long time from a good time libertarian.
But what specific, you're invoking like the Daily, it's like I don't know anything about the Daily Stormer beyond.
He talked a bunch about great replacement theory. I mean, this has been, been exhaustively documented. I mean, there are biographies of the guy. The Times did a bunch of work on this. The bringing in of a macro narrative that there was a function I would call it a cabal of elites importing brown voters to replace you, that you were being betrayed by elites representing foreign interests and foreign people to sort of alter the culture of this country to their benefit, was something he hammered all the time.
Fox News is reporting tonight that the administration awarded a $172 million grant to a George Soros-linked organization which exists to, quote, help young border crossers avoid deportation. Now, why is some foreign-born billionaire allowed to change our country fundamentally? That's the big question.
Right, a relentless focus on crime from immigrants, a relentless focus on George Soros. And so to me, I see Tucker now and I see...
What did he say? Foreign-born billionaire? Who's that?
Now, why is some foreign-born billionaire allowed to change our country fundamentally? That's the big question.
Right, a relentless focus on crime from immigrants, a relentless focus on George Soros. And so to me, I see Tucker now and I see Tucker then. And I agree, the shackles are off a little bit. But I see him calling the same play. He's just had to turn up the dial a little bit because he doesn't have Fox News.
I don't think that's right. And I think let's take you're presenting it in a way that is very charged. I don't think quite fair. But let's take the
Tucker's a charged figure.
Let's take the narrative that you're portraying. I don't think that's exactly how I would put it, certainly. But the underlying facts are either true or not true. And in this case, mass demographic change has been and is a reality in the United States. And I think it's fair to talk about that politically. We've been talking about it politically for 10 years. And you could do it in a way that exemplifies bigotry or discrimination, of course, but you can also do it in a way that isn't an expression of bigotry or discrimination, but in fact is just a basic question, a question that people in the United States have been asking since the 1770s. Who are we? What is an American? And if we are a sovereign nation, we have not just the right, but really the obligation to determine these great questions of who comes in, who doesn't come in. And so I don't think that it is right to say that someone who is concerned about rapid and large-scale demographic change is kind of a white nationalist. That seems like the kind of
No, I'm saying
smear.
that the reason I think Tucker is a white nationalist is due to all the white nationalists.
Like that. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm not trying to. I guess I kind of lost it on Ezra a while ago. I don't think Ezra should be having these conversations, right? Like, what he just said is the equivalent of. So yesterday, sorry to do this, but it's these things, right? So yesterday, my wife raped me. Okay. Yesterday, I was raped by my wife. Okay, and that's the story I'm going to tell to the media. And then Ezra's like, so, we know that that's not true, right? We know that that didn't happen. And then this guy over here is like, well, but hold on. Okay, so rape is a way of framing it. But, we do know that they did have sex, correct? We know that, right? And we need to look at the underlying facts. And, yeah, you can frame it in different ways if you want, But, there is a legitimate thing to be talked about here that sex did occur between these two parties. Now, they decide to frame it as rape. But, we have to talk about the underlying facts. No, fuck you. The reason why you point to the abstract framing of things is because you're trying to invoke other ideas. And you can't do this thing. I don't know why people like Ezra let him do this. When you run away from the abstract framing, which is where you're summoning all of your prescription, all of your normative power to these underlying facts, which aren't even contested. Yeah, there's a lot of people that immigrate to the United States. You're not saying anything profound there. Everybody knows that. Nobody denies that. But when you frame it as though there's an intentional invasion happening, either due to external forces trying to destroy the United States or internal forces that are trying to subvert the white man in the United States to bring in outside people to invade us, that's a totally different claim than just the raw factual analysis of immigration. And for him to run away from that abstract framing to say, well, they did have sex, right? That's not what we're talking about. It's a totally different... I hate it.
That seems like a large-scale demographic change is kind of a white nationalist. That seems like the kind of
No, I'm
smear.
saying that the reason I think Tucker is a white nationalist is due to all the white nationalism. Well, let me ask a question. Let me ask a question fairly freely. Okay.
No, because that is a huge charge. And I just, again, what is the evidence of that? You could be concerned. Can you be concerned about mass demographic change without being racist? I think the answer is yes.
How do you find a white?
Can you be concerned about the unequal treatment of certain races in this country over time, and you want to solve those inequities using government policy? No! They'll ask you for all of this charity when it comes to framing their beliefs, but if you talk about affirmative action or DEI or whatever, they will do everything. They will fight these things with every fucking bone in their body. They won't give a fuck about any of the underlying facts or else. They know this. They know the game they are playing. They know they're doing this, and Ezra is being taken along here for a fucking ride. I don't know if he realizes it. Holy shit, it's so fucking annoying. Oh my God.
Nationalist.
Well, you make the charge, you define it, and substantiate your point.
So I think that Tucker's view is that the
take Tucker out of it. Just make it in a general argument.
A general argument of what
and then you can
nationalism.
kind of layer in Tucker.
So I think that there is a straightforward view in white nationalism, that there is such a thing as a white race. That race is
so people
fundamentally
can't look,
European.
People can't look
came
white.
here and founded this country. That race has, depending on the variant of white nationalism we're talking about, genetic advantages or cultural advantages, and that race deserves to have, should have dominance, particularly over this country. There are harder and softer versions of this, right? In some versions, Jews are included in that white race.
Sure.
In some versions, they're not included in that white race. In some versions, we are talking about something I would describe primarily as a kind of nationalism, right? If you have too much of a country not sharing a common heritage, you lose solidarity. In some cases, we're talking about something much darker than that, right? There are people who just don't like the way their community is changing, and there's the KKK, right? Everything exists on a spectrum. But
would you say someone who is, for example, hesitant about rapid, large-scale demographic change is just a kind of 1% white nationalist? Yeah, because that would be the majority of the country.
Yes, I don't think it is a...
that's not what we're... this is another thing that I've talked about in the past, finding difficulty, explaining this, that, once something approaches a certain magnitude of expression, it becomes a different thing in kind. It's not just a little bit more of the thing, where it's oh, well, I'm really thirsty, and then I had 1 sip of water, but if I could have 5 sips of water, that would be better. And if I could have 10 sips of water, that would be better. So let me have 5 gallons of water forced into my body. Well, no, hold on. We're not talking about just drinking water that way. You're killing the person. We're talking about a totally different thing at this point. To be concerned about, and actually, I'm sorry, you don't even have to do a magnitude argument. There's a difference between being concerned about immigration changing the way that this country functions or having too much of it for economic or cultural reasons or whatever else. There's a difference between believing that and believing there's an intentional subversive plot that's being executed from the top down to bring foreign invaders into the country to dilute the will of the average European descended American. These are completely and totally different things. And to sit here and like even play the game of like, well, isn't everybody's kind of concerned about this a little bit. I mean, really think about it. It's like, no, not really. No, actually, no. No, actually, no, that's not true. No.
Problem or unfair or even wrong to worry about large-scale rapid demographic change. So to be more specific about Tucker. So you just had on the right-wing writer Scott Greer. He's got a book coming out on the online right called White Pill. So Greer was a former deputy editor at the Daily Caller. He left in 2018 after past writings for a white national site were dug up. And he once said of Tucker, so this is Greer speaking, Tucker is ultimately on our side. He can get millions.
Dude, are we going to get a real conversation? If he retreats to the answer of like, well, listen, that's just one person's interpretation. And is Tucker responsible for every single person? This is like YouTuber arguments from 10 years ago when you would harass women online and then pretend like you didn't know why your fan base was doing the same. Like, it's like
millions and millions of boomers to nod along with talking points that would have only been seen on VDare or American Renaissance a few years ago. These are both white national sites. So I guess what do you make of that?
Yeah, so I'll tell you what I make of it. And here's what I think is really interesting about some of these figures who were on the once kind of fringe elements of the right, who have in some ways seen the errors of that way of ideological thinking. And to me, you always want to leave people room to grow up, room to leave bad ideas behind, room for kind of critical self-reflection, and then to integrate back into kind of mainstream thinking. And I think Scott Greer is interesting. One of the reasons why we interviewed him was to kind of chart out this trajectory, which there's a lot of people that had more radical politics and then they moderate over time.
Not
so I was very
relevant.
interested in understanding
Not relevant.
That
not answering the question. Not relevant at all.
Development and growth, and then really scrutinizing. You want to actually try to figure out, all right, well, what's the way out of that? What's the way to demystify, to defang, to kind of delegitimize.
Yeah, you're trying to de-radical. Give me a fucking break. Oh my God.
Those ideas. So I'm not against you talking to him at all, right? What I'm saying is not that you shouldn't interview Scott
Good
Greer.
refocus.
Sure. I think many people change their politics dramatically, and one of the big problems.
The most frustrating thing, this happens so much with Donald Trump, is that Donald Trump will say a thing. Hey, Proud Boys, stand back and stand by. Okay? He'll say that thing. Liberals will accuse him of signaling to the Proud Boys. The Proud Boys will respond to him in the affirmative on Gab back then. Both Enrique Tarrio and I believe the other guy. Fuck, I forget his other name. Oates? The Oathkeeper guy. Fuck, what was his name? I think I debated him. Both of them responded in the affirmative. Understood loud and clear, sir. No, not Gab. It was Parler. And then on January 6th, they all show up ready with plots to help coup the government, right? So you have the original message. You've got liberals saying, I think he's saying this thing. You've got the people that the liberals are saying he's messaging to, acknowledging the message, and then you have them following through on a plot to coup the government. And conservatives will still say to this day, well, that's just one interpretation. Like, was he really communicating? Like, do we really think that? Was he really championing the Nazis? Did he really say both people are good on both sides? Like, bro, what more do you need? Like, what more do you need to establish the causal link between these things?
Problems that the left actually has is not giving people space to change.
Sure.
And putting people into a
don't
box
go.
where they're
Oh
held
my God.
in who they were as opposed to who they
Don't go. Don't. The Scott Greer guy said that Tucker Carlson is spouting white nationalist rhetoric that would have only been seen on actual like Daily Stormer tier publications a few years earlier. That's what he said. He didn't say I've changed and I'm no longer racist and blah 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 blah. Somebody said this is a Scott Greer tweet from 51 minutes ago. I wonder what culture encourages people to murder over being told to move to a different seat. Okay. He puts his IQ in his fucking Twitter thing. Oh my God. Highly respected writer and podcaster, author of No Campus for White Men. Jesus Christ. It's just he's just literally a it's just all like culture slop. Black nationalism isn't based, the end result of it, demanding more free stuff from whites while rewarding the worst pathologies of the black community. Thomas realized he was too smart for that nonsense. It's weird for a Canadian to call him an Uncle Tom for that. I wonder what his highly respected American history book list is. Oh boy. Never would I pay for this shit. Sorry, okay. So this is the guy he's defending as a reform, whatever.
not with you and Green Beer. I'm saying that I looked at Tucker in that period and thought, he's going in this direction that I understand this to be. The argument of, a Vidaire, and they all celebrated him. But I guess the question is whether, to phrase the question precisely, which maybe I haven't yet, whether one of the lessons of where he has gone and where some of the right has gone.
Did he get to run away from that question?
People like you on the right were a little insensitive to when something wasn't just a breaking of a liberal taboo.
Insensitive? Like, he's raping your mind, Ezra, and you're like asking him to do it gently. Like, it's so crazy. Does Ezra realize how much is being taken for a ride on this? Like, we're just asking you guys to acknowledge that maybe you were insensitive to some of the more... Also, because when you say insensitive, the implication there is that there were just kind of like pussy loser liberals that just had like a white nationalist feeling. But like, obviously that's not true. But like, maybe they should have just been a little bit more sensitive to the lib cucks that were crying about it. Meanwhile, the actual right nationalists, the white nationalist people are like, fucking Tucker Carlson? When did he become based? Oh my God, bro.
Boo. But was a movement towards a politics that was much more, let's call it white identity focused.
Oh my God.
Okay. Huge point. I would break it down in a couple ways. One, I don't think that's quite accurate. I actually think that the statement you're reading, and you could probably read it from a number of other people, right? If you remember in 2016, Richard Spencer famously held like some sort of conference or group, and he said, "Oh yes, Trump has adopted. Trump is a creation of the alt-right."
We willed Donald Trump into office. We made this dream our reality. And if we will it, it is no dream. A quote I'm sure our friends at the Anti-Defamation League know very well.
It was completely delusional, totally self-serving, and a product of narcissism that I wouldn't take at face value. And so I think a lot of the radical elements you're talking about overstate this relationship because they desperately want it to believe it. And I think that someone like Tucker, I don't think it's accurate to say that Tucker on Fox in 2021 was laundering in talking points from American Renaissance. I don't think that's true. I think it's conflating.
But he was
superficial opposition to immigration, and the conflation game is really.
Let's go. Can we find what's an old dude? Tucker started to get crazy. There were terms for this. It wasn't just mass migration. It was the Great Replacement. This was a year ago. I think he said this. Didn't he say this on Fox News? I hate how fucking dog shit YouTube has become. I don't need this person's response to it. Okay, whatever.
Anton recently coined a term called the celebration parallax. As Anton described it, the celebration parallax means the same set of facts is either true and wonderful or false and outrageous, depending entirely upon who asserts it. See how that works? There's no greater example of the celebration parallax than the issue of the so-called Great Replacement theory. So Democrats can talk about engineering demographic change for political advantage all they want. It's wonderful. It's glorious.
I'm so sorry, but that's like a neo-Nazi. That is the neo-Nazi idea, is that our demographic change is being engineered, it's artificial, and it's being done by the elite in order to suppress the will of the white race. In this case, in favor of the Democratic Party. It's just missing the Jewish element. But this is the Great Replacement theory that neo-Nazis and white identitarians and white Europe and everybody else used to talk about. This is it. Wholesale. Like, that's it.
Glorious when they do it. Yes, it's happening, and we love it. The thing is, though, Republicans are actually not allowed to notice that it's happening. And if they do, they're racist. Case in point. Today, USA Today just came out and admitted that the Democratic Party's entire electoral strategy was built on the Great Replacement. This is a real excerpt from an actual news article. We're quoting. For many years, Democrats have hoped that Latino voters could be the key to turning traditionally red states to purple. Now it's unclear whether that will be the case. End quote. Whoa! Someone better alert Jonathan Greenblatt at the ADL so he can denounce the Democratic Party. And if you pay him enough, he will, because that's how that works.
Also known as genocide. Oh, is this person pro Great Replacement theory, maybe? I can't even tell for Amy Adams. Why are immigrants a source of strength to our country, but not their own? The Kalergi plan? Oh my God, I just got sucked back to 2015 debating neo-Nazis. What was this conspiracy that a Jewish guy wanted to basically ship in a bunch of BBC cock to Nazi Germany to fuck all of the German women to breed out the Nazism from them? Jesus, fuck. Unironically, that was the idea. And that was like the blueprint for the Great Replacement that we see the Jews doing here today.
This is the
That was
replacement
like 3 years ago, and I don't even know when that was on Fox News. I might have been even older on Fox News.
theory, but
It was not a theory, it's a reality.
It's in
The
yeah.
Canadian population, like the American population, the European population, replaced.
American and European, that concept of like the American white is a European white.
And when I'm speaking about mass immigration, people don't understand that last year in Canada, we had 1.3 million foreigners coming to our country for a country of 40 million people. That is mass immigration.
That's an invasion.
Yeah, 97% of the growth of
Invasion
our population last year
terminology.
was coming from mass immigration. The immigrants that are coming here, the foreigners that are coming to Canada, coming from countries that doesn't share our Western civilization values. This is
Western, so it's like every single, like they hit them, bing, 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 bing.
Really, I think, dishonest. And unfortunately, for a lot of time, it worked. And so I think that, in fact, we're in a much better place than in the past. And I remember some of these groups like ADL, SPLC, Media Matters. You know, they came after me with many, many smears, trying to destroy my reputation, trying to get me deplatformed from social media, trying to kind of eliminate me from the public sphere. None of it worked, thankfully. The ACLU, I would also add. And in fact, as I look back, the arguments that they were making were preposterous. And they only succeeded because people felt fear. And so I'm glad that we don't live in that condition of fear anymore. And today we can talk very reasonably across a table, which I think is good. But I'm certainly not going to forget the emotional tone and the political vulnerabilities of that era. And again, the SPLC that was coming after me because of God knows what was at the same time giving money to neo-Nazis and white nationalists.
And then we've got the Trump
indictment
indictment talking point. We got the Trump, that none of these organizations would have existed, by the way. That Charlottesville March and everything that they said wasn't a real thing. They always live in both worlds on this. January 6th, that was literally just a peaceful protest. Wait a second, it wasn't a peaceful protest? Well, of course it wasn't. It's because Antifa was there. Oh, you're saying that there was a riot at the Capitol? Well, no, I don't think there was a riot. It was just like a bunch of peaceful people walking around. Oh, wait, actually, it caused over $1 billion in damages that we had to pay for related to the cops' deployment and everything else. Well, obviously that happened because the FBI was there fomenting the entire thing. It's like they live in both worlds all the time, right? Oh, Charlottesville and all these neo-Nazi organizations, well, they weren't even really neo-Nazi. Oh, okay, sure, they were, but that's just because they were propped up by the SPLC. We know that because of the Trump indictments. Bruh.
That the supply of racism in the United States,
Comes from the
and
left.
including racism on the right in the United States, has dwindled to such a small degree in real life
That the left has to fund it.
that it took the SPLC
Yep.
to actually inject cash into that ecosystem merely to keep it alive. And so I just don't. Yeah,
You ever
to
think
me, it's
about
not persuasive.
one way of thinking about that period that I think is how
And then that's all just like stated as fact. True, actually. That's a really good point. There wouldn't even be racism on the right if it wasn't for the left funding all of it. That's so true.
think about it is that two things were sort of true at the same time. So one, there was way too
This
much.
is a friendlier interview than I've ever given to fucking Fuentes or Lauren or anybody ever that I've ever talked to my entire life, by the way. But okay.
Speech racism. There was too much cancellation. There was too much that instead of being willing
Yeah,
to have
true.
arguments, people just tried to make the arguments unhavable.
True.
That all happened.
True.
I don't deny any of
Yeah,
that.
true.
And on the other hand,
True.
a lot of what
And now we do the
people
thing
more on the
like
left,
the good lib cuck, where we sit here, and we talk about like all the things that we're going to give in the argument, but you're not going to get anything back from him. He's going to nod and he's going to agree 1,000,000,000%, and then you guys are going to 100% like have a camaraderie. Well, yeah, true. But then as soon as you ask for anything from his side, he's going to deny all of it every single time.
in that moment were afraid of or what they predicted also happened. The alt-right moved much more from the fringe to the center. I always think about
The alt-right was totally destroyed after Charlottesville.
I
There it is. What? Yep. No. He's not going to give you a single fucking thing on any of this, buddy. Not a single fucking thing on any of this.
Yeah.
I think maybe
And
we
I
have a different view of what the
yeah.
alt-right represented, which is
Okay.
fair enough. But I think a lot of ideas that were very, very, very far from the center. I think about Elon Musk and him writing. And I mean, later he had to like try to figure out how to apologize for this. But when somebody basically said like the Jews have been funding the great replacement.
Did Elon say that? Yeah.
No, Elon didn't say that. What he said was underneath that. He said to whoever had tweeted that, "You have spoken the truth." And then he had to go pour Auschwitz and things like that.
Okay. The Auschwitz. Yeah.
The Auschwitz apology tour. So
He was kind of trolling. Like you are getting gaslit. Actually, you know what? New meme. I think that the next big industry in the United States, and I would support this, is I think that you should start an industry where you scam people, figure out a way to tap into whatever part of the brain shuts off when they talk to conservatives, and go scam the fuck out of liberals until they're broke and destitute and don't have the money to work jobs in media anymore and have to go get other jobs. If you're going to be this gullible, like, an easy question is like, do you think that Elon Musk is just like a fucking openly avowed white nationalist? It is the most, bro, go look at this guy's Twitter account ever. And he's tweeted like 50 million different white nationalist things a day. When he's not tweeting about his businesses, he's constantly tweeting and fomenting and retweeting like white nationalist rhetoric. Constantly. When it's either his businesses or Starlink. In 1825, a rich Welsh industrialist bought an entire American town to prove that socialism could work. He had the money, the buildings, the theory, and the hundreds of eager followers waiting to move in. 2 years later, it was over. I don't know anything about this. I guess anti-socialist stuff too. Warren identified the deeper problem. This is true. I hate all the one-word fucking tweets that he does as well. Good analysis of rent control. Hold on. Don't worry. We're only 7 hours in. We'll find some white identitarian talking point today. I know we can do it. I know we can do it. Free money, housing, etc. acts as a massive financial forcing function to draw illegals to America and Europe. Quote tweeting a guy that says, I think ending welfare for immigrants would solve most of our immigrant problem. Imagine believing the United States of America has a generous welfare state. That's why people come here? It's not to work? Let's see. What are the replies? Here is how stupid giving welfare to the people view of unwanted immigrants, but the view of government. These Muslim immigrants come to the EU, UK due to lavish benefits, while their home countries or other Muslim countries give them nothing. Isn't it weird that in America, our flag and our culture offend so many people, but our benefits don't? What benefits? In the United States? Oh, nice. This guy is fighting him. Starlink, Tesla. The truth about Ellis Islanders. Around 2% were denied entry due to poor health or for holding anti-Christian ideology. 33% voluntarily returned home because there wasn't welfare in the United States back then. Returning home during the age of mass migration. Nice. Orwell was a genius. Orwell was talking about the other guys, by the way. Orwell is always talking about the other guys. Never your guys, always the other guys. The Fountainhead, true. Oh my god, Ayn Rand solved all of politics with 2 books. Grok, grok, grok. True. USAID funds Islamic extremists abroad. Did you know that? This is how USAID spent your tax dollars. Four-story elevator. Wow, real man of the people he is. Damn, 4-story elevator? Loser? Treasury ditched numeracy test to increase diversity hires. Jesus Christ.
Yeah. You know, even now, Musk is very conspiratorial, and where he is in 2026, now the world's first trillionaire, owning, you know, what used to be Twitter. And the things he like kind of pumps
He's laughing because it's epic, and he thinks it's base, by the way.
Considered incredibly marginal, even in Trump's first term. So 2 things I think were true, right? I think there are many ways which the left went too far, and the forces the left was worried were there are much closer to the center. Yes, there are parts of the alt-right that are not significant today. Richard Spencer is not a significant figure. Nick Fuentes has a bigger audience than Richard Spencer ever did.
Sure.
And there is, I mean, when I'm on X and other places, the amount of just constant anti-Semitism and anti-Indian racism I see just happening in people's mentions is wild to me. And I mean, I don't think he'll win, but you look at Fishback, who's running for governor in Florida, it's sort of almost unimaginable to think of somebody like him being a figure in Republican Party politics who would be commanding support of practically anybody. And I think the reason that people worry about him is they don't think he's going to win, but he seems to be doing very well among the young right.
Sure.
And so I think you can hold your view, which I at least partially share, that there are many ways in which the left and the speech policing and the boundaries went too far. And also, a lot of the people who were most hair on fire in that period had a point, and some of their more kind of
nope, he's not going to grant it. He's not going to grant any of it. But let's see, maybe he will. Maybe he will.
HHS Secretary and Tulsi Gabbard, DNI, and try to make
the triumph of bipartisanship,
and try to make Matt Gaetz Attorney General.
Bipartisanship gets totally with a Democrat.
And then it all happened. So it's like the fact that you can have these things be true at the same time.
You can always tell by the demeanor, like these retarded little fuck quips that this fucking loser is inserting here. I don't even know if Ezra can pick up on it. Maybe it also might be that people in lib left media have autism and they can't pick up on like subtext or human communication. Maybe they should only talk to each other on Discord. Maybe if he did Discord interviews, that would be better, since he can't pick up on like human body language or anything. Like he's literally giggling and chuckling along at all of this. And
so I think you're kind of understating the dynamic on one side. I mean, it wasn't just about speech policing.
Understating. It was actually even worse than like Ezra. Even as much as Ezra granted, this guy's not going to agree that Ezra granted enough, and Ezra downplayed the fuck out of how crazy the right has gotten, and this guy's not even going to acknowledge that.
After 2020, the left maintained a kind of apparatus of social annihilation. And I went through it myself. I had the ACLU subpoena me and harass me with a lawfare campaign that cost me a lot of money. I had the SPLC and the ADL put me on some sort of...
A lawfare campaign? I'm trying to think if the word lawfare has ever been used to apply to, like, civil suits. Like, I know that, obviously, corporations can bully people with civil suits, and people don't like that, and that is a thing. But I feel like, generally speaking, when we say lawfare, I feel like usually that was in reference to, like, the Department of Justice. Like, when people say lawfare against Trump, they were talking about New York State. They were talking about improper use of, like, the federal authorities. But I don't know. I guess we can make the civil suits, too. I'm so curious what he actually got sued for. Every time you dig into these suits, they're always way crazier than these people say.
Subpoena me and harass me with a lawfare campaign that cost me a lot of money. I had the SPLC and the ADL put me on some sort of hate list that was totally bogus, trying to destroy my reputation. And so I had people, threats of violence against me that were very credible at the time. And so, people trying to get
what does that have to
going
do?
After my
very credible?
family, my kids.
What happened?
We shouldn't forget just how awful that period was, and how insane that
Infinite
period was.
victimhood.
And unfortunately, I think that many of the institutions...
It's so funny. They advertise their own strategies with their projection, right? We can't forget how horrible that period was in 2016, right? This is the same thing that they accuse the Jews of doing, right? Oh my God, you're going to sit here and talk about the Holocaust some more? Why? You want to talk about the Holocaust forever so that what, you can make us feel guilty and get to do whatever the fuck you want in society? This is what he's doing right here.
On the left have learned, after having suffered some consequences for enabling that, the movements that they have sparked are in fact alive and well. And look, I think the difference that maybe you're not seeing is that the radical, nihilistic, and violent left-wing movements have the full support of the left's institutions. And what we're talking about is a radical, nihilistic movement.
Not even remotely close. If Ezra has spent more than 2 microseconds looking at any news outlet or any social media platform ever, we're literally at a civil war point right now inside the Democratic Party between the institution and the radicals. How could you ever even remotely expect that point to come across as true?
It's on the right. Do not have any institutional support and are bubble up in your Twitter comments, which again don't agree, but is different in kind, not just in quantity. And in the case of someone like James Fishback, I think it's a great test. Fishback is very charismatic. I think we would all agree on that. I talked with your colleague Michelle Goldberg about this. But even with a kind of individual charisma, if he's like the Groyper candidate for governor of Florida, which is again like kind of a crazy thing that is happening, I want to see the actual vote tally, because that's going to show me where he is, where he stands with the actual conservative population, the conservative voter, the conservative movement as a whole. I suspect that he's going to get absolutely trounced. It happened with Vivek running against the guy Casey Putsch in Ohio. He got blown out by, 60, 70 points. And so by contrast, you look at something like the kind of trans ideological movement that I think is both kind of a lie. It's grounded in a series of falsehoods, maintained this suppressive, threatening, censorious power in the kind of pre-Elon Twitter days and in the general kind of woke years. And then look, another uncomfortable fact, per capita has committed more mass violence than any other group. And so they're
so happy for like the one, or I know that one person that did the church shooting was a trans person, and I think there was one other, right? They so love the fact that the 2 trans people did those shootings, because now they can have this per capita thing basically forever, because trans people are such a low percentage of the population. They can always say that trans people commit more shootings per capita, more shootings per capita, more shootings per capita.
Willing to indulge in, and I think it's important to have a kind of criticism of, let's say...
Wait, there's like 14 trans shooters? I thought there was I know there was the big one that looked into the church, and then there was at least one other. Were there 12 other trans shootings? I feel like I would have heard about these a ton more. There are 10 or so ever? Oh, I'm talking about like recently, over the past like couple years. There were 2 pretty big ones, I think.
Elements on my own side. But I also think that if we were to just measure it out, to put it on a scale, it's looking a lot more like this. Assassination's attempt against President Trump, the assassination of Charlie Kirk, the kind of security posture that's required for conservatives just to go on a college campus. That's how I measure it. It's like I'm looking at it, I'm feeling it, I'm seeing it with my colleagues. After Charlie Kirk was killed, I called all the people, friends and colleagues in the business, and I just was completely distraught for weeks. And again, while I don't support James Fishback for governor, again, I think that it's kind of an empty symbolism, whereas on the other side, it feels like these ideologies have the support of the institutions, they've wielded power irresponsibly in the past, and still have the kind of ultimate political threat of violence that I know everybody in my world has seen, has experienced, has feared. And so,
I mean, I guess,
do you not see that? Is that
I don't have the same view of it, but let me hold as saying that your experience of it.
Even what he's saying there, I don't have the same view of it. implies that there's just as much truth, in fact, on the other guy's side that Ezra has on his side, right? We can have two different views on this. I understand. We can agree to disagree in here. Like, there is no world where you believe that the radical left has support from the establishment Democrats. It's just, that is a delusion. That's a lie. That's a propaganda talking point that you use to sell your own party's radical extremist side.
I understand, right? And as somebody who also, sometimes deals with threats of violence and other things of that nature, I think the way this often looks to people on the left, particularly looks right now, is that when you say these nihilistic, I think you call them, ideals, ideas are not held at high levels of the right, they're only supported institutionally on the left, I see it the opposite way.
Really?
Right? I see it the opposite way, and I'll explain why.
Really?
I don't see the SPLC, the Southern Poverty Law Center, as like a powerful, potent left-wing actor. They're not
really.
Like,
they could 10 years ago they could nuke you.
I'll go through my thing.
Yeah.
ADL, I don't even see as on the left, which is a different question. I understand, but I see the Trump administration as powerfully and potently extreme, and willing to use the power of the federal government from deploying ICE and CBP agents to different cities to
supporting Nick Shirley. That was a Republican government up, by the way. All of the paperwork he got, everything he got, literally came from Republican Party elements.
I do not see a world in which there is this huge separation between the extreme elements of the right and this administration. I keep hearing from people like you, right, who I think has talked about this, that there's a huge number of corporates working in House and Senate offices in Congress. That Bronze Age Pervert is one of the most popular people to read if you're a Trump staffer. And I see those things actually moving into things like national security strategies, about the civilizational suicide of Europe. Now, I recognize we're not going to agree on all this, right? This part I'm not going to try to bridge the gap. What I will say is that the other thing I think people on the left see has been a sort of movement from 2016 to 2024, where it's almost unbelievable how far things have gone, right? Even Trump 1 to Trump 2 are very, very different beasts. And so all of a sudden, it doesn't look impossible to imagine that Fuentes and Carlson and Fishback are the future, not the fringe. I think a lesson that has been burned into many of us is that it is dangerous to dismiss something that seems to have a lot of energy around it as a fringe, because what is today's fringe is tomorrow's.
No one subscribed to Ezra Klein's podcast is getting converted by this guy's talking points. It's useful for understanding his thinking, though. What? No, it's not. It's not useful for anything. The guy is just speed running neo-Nazi talking points, basically. Maybe not quite neo-Nazi, but he's just speed running all the MAGA talking points. I'm not getting anything from this. Like, what is the... Like, at least on Gavin Newsom talking to Charlie Kirk, there was, like, some strategy there. This guy is just giving us his revisionist take of history that has absolutely zero foundation in reality whatsoever. Like...
Maybe not center, but much more live and potent political force.
And would you say that you saw that happen on the left between 2014 and 2024?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
In part, I think you guys are about to learn some lessons we learned.
Yeah.
Like, it's not even remotely the same. How could you even compare the two? The worst that the left got was like the college shit and the cancel culture online shit got pretty bad. Like, I definitely agree with that. The right has us like teetering on the edge of World War III, and the United States has thrown its position away as the leader of the free fucking world because the guy in charge gets all of his news off of fucking Facebook and X. These aren't even remotely the same thing. Well, we had our moment, now you guys are having your moment. Blah, 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 blah. Really?
Yeah, I mean, maybe so, but I would argue that actually the right has done a better job at managing it. And I think we'll see, and I hope I'm right, that with something like the Fishback campaign. I think of James Fishback as a human meme. It's like amazing. He's like, if you
just
take the mimetic energy from that corner of the online discourse and turned it into a human being, it's like it would look and sound like James Fishback.
Yeah.
But the reality is that once those ideas gain contact with the people, the culture, the institutions on the right, they're not going anywhere.
Let me try to frame this more in
and
terms
the point on diversity.
By the way, what this guy just said, like, this guy's just a giant. Just curious. Hold on. See if anybody can think of what I'm alluding to. Okay, so. This guy's just a giant fucking meme, right? He's crazy. Our institutions obviously wouldn't support him. He's a wild, insane dude. He's saying crazy things. He's like racist. He's hateful. Like, this guy, I mean, like, he's just a wacky, loony fucking dude, right? Like, this guy just, right? This is every single fucking thing these guys said about Donald Trump. The exact same verbatim. Nobody took Trump seriously in the beginning of the primary. Nobody. Halfway through the primary, people didn't even really take him that seriously. It's the exact same shit. But once Trump got in, every single conservative became the most ardent Trump defender on the planet.
There's more in terms of arguments I've seen you making.
Sure.
And tell me, if I get a chain in this wrong, you tell me where.
I will.
Right? I think you now have a problem with a racialist right. I think watching the takeover of conspiracies after Kirk's murder has been sobering or scary for a lot of people on the right. To watch people accusing Israel of it, to eventually see people accusing 21 USA of it, or some kind of plot from the people around him, I think has been, for major figures on the right, to be making those arguments has seemed to me to be a kind of shocking moment for a lot of you. And then I've watched you and others, on X and elsewhere, like look in your mentions and be like, oh shit, there's a lot of racism here.
But don't do that.
Something's happening. Can you tell me which part of this you don't agree with?
Yeah, well, I mean, here's how I see it, and your general analysis is correct. So there is a racialist right, let's say. I've been writing about this for a number of years,
Super
but I think a
minority.
lot of it is something of an optical illusion, where, and you see this on let's say on the left, where a small group of people that is very loud online appears to represent a larger share of a political coalition or the general population than it really does. And so, look, I don't want a racialist right.
Remember, Steve Bannon, okay, like the fucking co-founder or the inheritor of Breitbart, the guy who calls himself like the founder of the modern alt-right, was a Trump campaign surrogate and then was a White House surrogate that advised Trump on elections for like 2 years or whatever into the Trump presidency in the first one. Steve Bannon, by the way. But yeah, we'll pretend it's the same on both sides.
Political coalition or the general population than it really does. And so, look, I don't want a racialist right. That is like a clear position on my part. And I think to the extent that we have like anti-Semitic conspiracy theories bubbling up from the digital sphere, it's a problem that we have to deal with, an untruth or a falsehood that should be called out for what it is. And what I think it is at heart is that, and I've talked to a lot of young right-wing guys, so sometimes I'll have lunch or dinner when I'm in DC or elsewhere with younger guys and just say, hey, kind of walk me through like what's happening for people. Like we're older now. You and I are middle-aged now. So say, hey, walk me through this thinking. And in kind of non-judgmental, just kind of help me understand what's happening with some of the more kind of radical or racialist young men. And this is the description that they give.
It's because
they say,
culture and society has left us so out in the cold. Now he's about to justify why everybody is getting that way after saying that people really aren't getting that way, but somehow it's going to be all the left's fault. Okay? God, I'm so ready for this.
These are guys who hit high school during COVID. They kind of
COVID
transitioned
lockdowns.
into an almost a purely digital life.
Yeah, because
with all
the
the various rabbit holes you could get into. They came of age as a function of your kind of entering adulthood during the kind of George Floyd hysteria, where their teachers at school,
left.
their media, institutions,
Hated men, hated
government,
white
everyone
people.
was saying, you're a young white man, you're
Young
the
white
problem,
man,
you're
yes,
the oppressor,
yes,
you're
yes,
evil, you should be
yes.
denied opportunities
Yes.
because of your biology, because of your ancestry. And essentially that they were programmed by the kind of George Floyd hysteria into thinking racially. And instead of what I think is the proper and the correct response, which is to say, we've got to move beyond this. We're going to fight this racialist thinking on the left, on the right, wherever it comes from.
Yeah.
They essentially psychologically submitted to it, but then reversed the polarity. I don't think that's a good way to pursue it. I don't think on the kind of philosophical question it's right. I don't think that from the practical political conception it's fruitful. But
So
in a certain way, it's like,
King.
I get it. I understand it. Young people are
responding to the left.
Kind of in a position of growing up and having a chip on your shoulder. I think it's extremely disruptive. And what I see as the antidote to this, at least within my political coalition, is to be an older brother figure to say, hey, I could get why you think that. However, the actual path to success is this other way. So I don't think that this is like predetermined. I actually think that young people have their brain isn't locked in its ways. And so I think you want to bring people who are frustrated towards a better path. And I think that someone like Candace Owens, who's just like driving people into a ditch, you have to kind of guide them away from that.
So I think first there's truth to that narrative. I do think that one of the things that happened over the past decade or so, and this is something I talk about in my first book, Why We're Polarized, is there's a huge upsurge in telling people that the right way to understand life.
Like he's not like fully incorrect, but this is maybe it's just like Israel Palestine, like everything is like people just tell one side of the story. Like we're just only going to talk about the left. We're not going to talk about like people look at black people and it's like George Floyd, what's going on there? George Floyd. True, but people looked at like the when Obama mentioned that Trayvon Martin could have looked like his kid, and Republicans in the United States lost their fucking mind over it. Or when Obama said that the whole Henry Louis Gates thing, when he got arrested outside of his own fucking home, that maybe the cops acted stupidly. Ben Shapiro cited those two things as like radicalizing moments in his life against Obama. So why would you be surprised when a whole bunch of people look at the George Floyd situation like, man, I don't know, maybe people hate black people in this country. It's kind of weird, right? I mean, like, but there's no accountability ever. It's the adult-child version of politics as well. Like, Republicans can only respond to their environments. Democrats have to rise above and do better.
America is all through the lens of identity groups. And when you tell people to look at identity groups, they will form a more coherent sense of their own. And a line I have in that book is, identity activates under threat.
Sure.
And so the more you tell people that their identity is a problem, the more they're going to begin to defend that identity and feel that identity and begin to self-define around that identity. So I think all of that happened.
And I think that you would also agree, perhaps, that the institutions, the legal system, the prevailing narrative at universities, corporations, et cetera, was explicitly anti-white for a number of years that for these young people were formative.
I think it's sometimes moved into being anti-white. I would not say it was all
I
explicitly
did
anti-white.
hundreds of reports on this from institutions, from banks, corporations, universities, white men bad. If you wanted to just put it into kindergarten language, white man bad. And that was the dominant position for the institutional left.
I remember telling people around me that this thing where people are putting out like papers on what are the negative traits of whiteness was a disaster, right? So I don't necessarily disagree with that. I think there's truth to it.
And legally, affirmative action, DEI, was institutional, government-backed discrimination against one racial group.
So the thing that I'm interested in, though, here is that...
No, it would be at least 2, because Asians complain. That's one of their talking points, but he's not using that one now, I guess.
You're now in power. And
I live on a farm in Washington State.
Your executive orders get passed, the whole thing. And these things can all go in better or worse directions. These are all long-standing energies in American life. The sort of argument I'm going to make, to be, cards on the table about what I'm doing, is that I think the empirical and epistemological structures on the right and the habits they took on in order to win are playing with passions that are very dangerous. Like, I'll give a good example of this.
Sure.
You can believe what you want about whether or not the immigration of Haitians into Springfield, Ohio.
My issue with that guy earlier in chat who was like, it's not like Ezra Klein's audience is listening to this and falling for it. My issue is that, like, when you come away, like, who do we think we're listening to right now? Okay. We think that we're listening to, if we were to draw the political party lines here, if this is the center, okay, Ezra Klein is generally speaking, I feel like if we have our, we'll say center left, we'll say progressives, and then we'll say our communists, okay? Communist socialists. The impression I think that most people have is that Ezra Klein is quite close to right here. He's on this like progressive-y, like almost far lefty kind of thing. I think this is where most people in their minds have like Ezra Klein kind of clocked. It's like a little bit, like quite a bit further left. Maybe not all the way on this like super progressive side, but I think this is where the average audience assumes that Ezra Klein is. And then on the right, we've got, I don't even know how the fuck you would draw these anymore. I guess we can just say MAGA. And then you've got, I guess, just like full-on neo-Nazis over here or whatever, right? Coming in, I guess, Chris Rufo, I guess. I don't know. Where do we think he's going to be at? I guess based on the entry and his political strategy, I would have expected to be around like kind of this MAGA line kind of area, I guess. In this area he would be. But then when we actually listen to this interview, the positions that these guys are defending, right? So we imagine that this conversation is going to be like fighting a little bit. It's going to come across as kind of like this center-left fight here. These are going to be the grounds we're fighting on, I guess. But Ezra Klein has conceded every single fucking thing right up to the center or beyond. Like, at least he's conceded like all this ground, and this guy is defending Chris Tucker's great replacement theory, and he's defending James Fishback as like, oh, well, he's a really charismatic guy, and we can kind of see where the party is, right? And he's not conceded a single fucking thing. So the actual ideological ground that we end up fighting over is like way the fuck over here. It's like what this podcast is basically promoting. And it's like, what the fuck are we doing right now? What is this? Like, this is the ground that we're fighting on. It's like, it's just insane to me. I don't know. Whatever.
The people of that city had mixed views on it. I mean, the mayor and others were very pro, and it had been good for the economy, and Springfield had been in a period of decline, and then you had a large Haitian influx. And then you get into this thing that happened in 2024 about Haitians eating cats and dogs, where there's a Facebook post and the right, all the way up to Donald Trump in one of the debates, begins adopting it. You sort of go on a quest to try to figure out if it's true, and, to shorthand a long story, maybe in Dayton, Ohio, there was somebody who wasn't Haitian.
Correct.
Who maybe somebody thought, but other people didn't think, had eaten a cat.
Somebody and other people is quite important.
People can read your piece. Yeah. They can read the Dropsite News article. I'm not going to convince you one way or the other.
But the Dropsite News article, they went out to debunk my story, and they ended up finding another independent corroborating witness. So
it's not how I read it. I read it. But I, on some level, am not even focused on that. What I'm saying is that when you get very into moves like, we are going to accuse broad communities of eating cats and dogs, which I think we can all agree, Haitians are not in general eating cats and dogs.
Not conceded, but granted. You're debate brain, dude. In conversation, you can grant things to explore further down the logical chain instead of parking at the first issue in it. No, you fucking retard. If you're granting too many actual facts, then the moral question is boring at that point. It's like having a trial for a person who's accused of murder, And it's like saying, okay, fine, let's grant that he murdered the person, okay? What are we going to do? Well, what do you mean? It's a capital offense. It's a felony. He's electric chair or whatever, right? He's going to die. He's sentenced to death. It's like, well, hold on, bro. And then you're like, come on, Destiny, you don't have to debate on every single fucking fact, okay? Can't we explore further what we do? No, that's it. If you grant the facts that Ezra Klein has granted, then everything this guy's saying is true. There's not even an argument to be had here. If it is the case that the left were way too aggressive with all their cancel culture, that the right is really only responding to a heavily aggressive leftist environment where all of the far left figures also enjoy broad institutional support from the Democratic Party and they've been working in conjunction with each other to constantly attack and threaten conservatives, then everything this guy's saying is pretty true. I'm sorry, you're doing the thing that I accused earlier where people are like, oh, it's just a soft science of politics, so it can be whatever. No, these like weird intellectual fucking masturbatory sessions where we just have like the soft conversations of politics. No, talk about facts. This would be like me debating somebody else on like the many worlds theory of quantum mechanics without being able to explain the double slit experiment or without being able to have like even an understanding of what like a quantum field is. But it's like, well, I just want to talk because I think that like every time I make a choice, like couldn't it be that like another universe is being created? I kind of feel that way when I have dreams sometimes, right? Well, let's just grant all the hard, like the math and the theories and the quantum mechanics. Let's just grant all of that. And let's just have the really interesting conversation of whether or not I feel like it would be really cool if a whole bunch of universes existed. I want to argue the many worlds interpretation of quantum mechanics without even being able to explain like what a quantum field is. Because I think that that's the really interesting. Like, do you understand how fucking retarded that sounds? To grant all the facts and then have the interesting conversation?
You are going to unleash forms of anger and hatred and fear that are not controllable. And I think one of the mistakes the right has made, and frankly people like you have made, is thinking these passions can then be corralled again. This idea that you can find these really high passion, like mimetic containers. The thing say, well, the real issue here is just we want to have a conversation about how much is the appropriate level of Haitian immigration into Springfield, Ohio. But that the way you get people to care about it, J.D. Vance said this very explicitly, is that, well, people really care about the cats and dogs.
The American media totally ignored this stuff until Donald Trump and I started talking about cat memes. If I have to, create stories so that the American media actually pays attention to the suffering of the American people, then that's what I'm going to do, Dana, because you guys are...
He's about to say, that quote is out of context. J.D. Vance didn't mean that he was going to create stories. He just wanted to highlight stories. Ezra...
completely letting Kamala Harris coast.
Which, again, I think my view is that there's never been any hard evidence of that happening in the Haitian community in Springfield, Ohio. Like, nobody has substantiated that, and nor have you.
Correct, yeah.
Right.
I haven't made that. In fact, I've said, look, there's no evidence of this particular claim. We should be more careful.
And so there's been
I like how that guy gave a stronger position on that than Ezra did. Ezra's like, there's been no hard evidence of that. There's no soft evidence of that. Of Haitians eating cats and dogs on the street, Ezra. What are you talking? There's no hard evidence of that. What the fuck are you saying, bro? You're crazy.
a kind of consistent, like this idea that you can unleash, like really, I think, quite terrible passions and then hold it to a level that is controllable. And what you're seeing with Candace Owens,
Illuminator, thank you for the gifted subs. I think I missed him. 10 gifted kick subs altogether. I've missed it today. Thank you.
You're seeing with the new Tucker Carlson or the old Tucker Carlson, however you want to call it, what you're seeing with Nick Fuentes and the rise of Nick Fuentes, who we've not really talked about, but I think is a necessary figure of thinking. In
How
the way
long
we think
is
about
Fuentes
this,
going to be rising
is that
for?
There
My
wasn't
God.
a way to stop that move. Like once people began to move in that direction, and there weren't sort of institutions that were strong enough and respected enough to stop it, that the place it's going on the right, when you talk about it becoming a third world click farm, is quite dangerous and quite grim. And now I will let you say everything you think.
Well, oh man, all right, where do I start?
You're wrong.
I gave you a lot there.
You're wrong on so
huge
much.
problems. I mean, one is that, and I'm doing reporting in California right now that has stories that have a similar kind of, let's say, shock value. For example, we did a story on migrants from Mexico and Honduras who come to San Francisco and get free sex change surgeries from the California state Medi-Cal system. This is a kind of explosive story that is true, that represents, I think, a lot of these underlying questions about homelessness policy, about immigration, et cetera. Look, if it's true, it's fair game, and there's a way to handle these stories in a responsible way, that you ensure the facts, that you present it fairly, and that you use it as a method of changing public opinion. That's how it's supposed to work. And so I think that the idea that there are taboos that cannot be crossed because they will unleash these kind of unspecified or vague, dangerous passions, I think is a problem in two regards. One is that if you're going for truth seeking,
Wait, somebody said he was one of the main guys spreading the Haitian dog shit. Is that true? All right, let's settle it. I will ready $5,000 bounty to anyone who can provide my team with hard, verifiable evidence that Haitian migrants are eating cats in Springfield, Ohio. Deadline is Sunday. Go. Well, hold on. Oh, wait, hold on. We have discovered that migrants are, in fact, eating cats in Ohio. We have verified with multiple witnesses and visual cross-references that African migrants in Dayton, the next city over from Springfield, barbecued these cats last summer.
Yo, What is this they got on the grill? Man, listen, man. There go a cat right there. His ass better get missing, man.
What the fuck are we even looking at?
Man. What is this they got on the grill?
The grill's not even on. I don't even know what the fuck this is. Are these supposed to be cats, I guess? I don't even know. Okay, good verification. Nice one. Good one, Chief.
Playing a kind of responsible
Thanks, Pizza Cake, for the $50.
Rhetorical game. No, I don't think that these questions are out of bounds at all. But second, the predictions have always been, that it's going to unleash some kind of horrible nativist violence sentiment, etc. But the only example of an ideological-driven assassination that we talked about today is the assassination of Charlie Kirk.
Yep.
This kind of prophecy of political violence is really comes.
If Ezra, I'm sorry. If Ezra doesn't even mention the Minnesota lawmakers, the right just mind fucks the media so much. They're so good at it. I am watching a rape in real time of Ezra Klein's mind being fucking disintegrated by every conservative that he talks to. If he can't even bring up the Minnesota lawmakers, let alone there are other people. Who was the one lady, the one lawmaker that got shot in the face? What about the Whitmer plot to fucking abduct her out of her fucking home? What about the who was the guy that threw the thing into Josh Shapiro's? Was that a right-winger or a left-winger? There was a guy who was trying to convince his family to vote for Trump, right? A little bit crazy. What about the Paul Pelosi thing? What about the pipe bombs found in the January 6th thing? What about, any of this? What about all the pipe bombs that were supposed to be mailed to all of the Democratic Party members by that crazy Trump guy that we don't even talk about?
What about January 6th?
From the institutional ideologies on the left, not the institutional ideologies on the right. And I think that
Jan 6 literally cheered on
has been hammered home
Trump
over and over and over these last few years.
Yeah.
And look, those of us on the right who are in this.
Yeah, what about the Buffalo shooter? That guy that went and walked. We don't even talk about these shooters. Everybody knows about the Charlie Kirk thing. Everybody knows about the Trump assassination attempts. Nobody knows about the guy who I'm pretty sure was on a live stream. I feel like I watched this a while ago. He was on a live stream. He's shooting and murdering black people in a store. Comes across a white person, oh, no, not you. You're chill. And then goes to kill more black people.
Business. Probably have to have
the problem is the Democratic media, they just get bored and then they move the fuck on.
No, it's not that they get bored. It's that they don't have a fixation point. They don't have a media control thing where it's we need to talk about this for the next 3 weeks, guys. These people do.
Firmness to say, no, the facts are not on your side in this argument.
So let me be more specific about what I'm saying, because I'm not making...
Really? No, I guess they didn't die in Minnesota. True. That was a meme. Good job, Ezra. Nice. Good one. True. I changed my mind. The Jews are controlling everything, and Ezra Klein is part of the Jewish conspiracy controlled by the right to launder these people's reputations and image. True.
A big prophecy of political violence. And I'm also not saying that there are these taboos you shouldn't touch. I think where I'm disagreeing is to say that there actually isn't truth-seeking here. There isn't enough truth in these arguments. There's too much of an attraction.
Which arguments?
So, arguments like the Haitian cats and dogs. We'll talk about others in a second.
Which is fine. Yeah.
And that the thing I'm worried about has arrived, right? I'm not talking about an unspecified future in which I am concerned the right will increasingly be taken over by conspiratorial, racist, misogynistic elements. I'm looking at a world where Nick Fuentes is a major figure on the American right.
Well, you guys are doing a great job at raising his profile.
Tucker Carlson is the guy who raised his profile,
which I think was a mistake.
I think
who the fuck cares about Nick Fuentes? What about Donald Trump? We're about to give Iran the greatest amount of power that it's enjoyed in the history of the entire country. Why the fuck are we talking about fucking Nick Fuentes?
Nobody cares about Nick Fuentes.
No, it's not. Why? Who the fuck cares?
He's a nothing. He's literally nobody.
We've had the federal government has fucking shipped off fucking federal murderers of people in the United States to others. Why do we care about this? Why are we talking about this?
Legitimate to say Tucker is the biggest figure in right-wing media.
Oh my God.
And he brought on Nick Fuentes and gave him such a gentle, kind interview. And Tucker, here's one thing I don't underestimate with Tucker. He's fucking good. He's a good interviewer. He has incredible talent as a media figure. If he wanted to cut the guy apart, he could have. As he did to Mike Huckabee when he wanted to do that, or to Ted Cruz when he wanted to do that.
Those who bless Israel will be blessed, and those who curse Israel will be cursed. And from my perspective, I want to be on the blessing side of things.
Those who bless the government of Israel?
Those who bless Israel is what it says. It doesn't say the government now, this says the nation of Israel. So that's in the Bible. As a Christian, I believe that.
Where is that?
I can find it to you. I don't have the scripture off the tip of my... You pull out the phone and use it.
It's in Genesis, but... So you're quoting a Bible phrase, you don't have context for it, you don't know where in the Bible it is, but that's like your theology? I'm confused.
And he didn't, because I think Tucker understands quite well where the passions are and where the energy is. And when I hear you,
No, they just had, that was just another example, just like Ezra's team and Ezra know nothing about the online media sphere or know nothing about where the more radical movements are in the United States. That was an example of Ted Cruz having no fucking idea. I think Ted Cruz legitimately thought he was going to talk to the host of Fox News, Tucker Carlson, for that interview. He had no fucking idea what he was walking into for that.
Times I hear you being more concerned about this. You're a little chiller in this, and I recognize you're talking to, in the New York Times podcast studio. But what I'm saying is I actually don't think the balance is right. That I think for some time people have been, and Donald Trump himself is like the king.
Like, Ezra is like presenting this as though this is supposed to be like a mindfuck big reveal that they're about to fight passionately over. Like, I actually think that the right has more political power. I actually think, the people with the 6'3" Supreme Court that stole a fucking judge from us, that have been ruling from the fucking White House for the past year and a half.
They're about to get another, by the way.
No, he's not retiring.
We'll see.
Like, wow, what a huge mind drop. And that's going to be the ground we fight on, is whether or not the conservatives have had more power in government over the past year and a half than fucking Biden. That's the ground we're going to fight on, bro.
Of this. There's a view to, it's the old take him seriously, not literally view. That, the thing that is being said maybe doesn't hold
I'm
up.
hoping that you can give me a little bit more, though, because I'm saying, well, what are you actually saying?
All right, so I'll give you a little
Nick
bit more.
Fuentes was on a podcast. I mean,
are you saying Nick Fuentes is not a big figure now and is not influential among young people on the right?
Who cares,
is that really,
bro?
Would you really make that argument?
No, I would make a slightly different argument. I think that Nick Fuentes is not a fundamentally political figure. He's a hyper-real figure of spectacle. That, again, is you can read my writings on the question. You can read my writings on this.
You can agree with him if you want, Ezra. You just have to make a real fucking argument afterwards. He's a hyper-real figure on the right who's more of a spectacle than a politically active figure. I could even sort of almost agree with that, but so was Donald Trump.
That question. I think he's a bad influence. What I've cautioned people on the right about that genre of personality is that when someone goes on a video and says, I love Hitler. Obviously, we don't love Hitler. Neither of us are fans of Hitler. But you should resist the temptation to be scandalized and shocked and lose your capacity to reason and perceive it correctly. Because what this is, it is a hyper-real spectacle optimized for digital algorithms to harvest attention and to harvest clicks. It's not actually political in that sense. It's not
what could be more hyper-real than literally I don't even know if Ezra knows what these words fucking mean. I think I don't even truly. Hyper-reality is, I think, is a Baudrillard concept. It's like the idea of like a fabricated reality where you have your simulacrums and your symbols within this hyper-reality that are in some way symbolic of the things that exist in reality. So like the micro Disney castle that exists in the background, but it almost seems like it's large enough to be a castle because of the perspective thing, and then it doesn't actually even resemble the castle that exists. You're living in a hyper-reality, right? But what that guy what could be more of a hyper-real thing than pretending that Haitians are eating cats and dogs, for that to be some kind of simulacrum that stands in for how immigrants conduct themselves in the United States, especially black ones, that you can actually cash out with some form of political action, like causing people to vote a certain way related to immigration, because this is what you've mindfucked people into believing. I don't even know if Ezra understands anything that's even being spoken about by the other guy here, though. It's okay.
To harvest attention and to harvest clicks. It's not actually political in that sense. It's not optimized towards any political outcomes. I just reject this idea that, some dumb kid that has, hijacked the algorithm with, superficial
dumb kid hijacked the algorithm with superficial ideological positions.
Spectacle is somehow therefore a symbolic.
Who does that describe, Mootin? Dumb kid hijacked the algorithm, superficial No, close. One more. Think. Dumb kid.
Dumb. Oh.
Yes, yes.
I know. My
you do.
mind melded. I just gotta remember his name.
You got
the YouTuber who went
and
did the.
Yep. Close.
Oh, Nick.
Yes.
No.
Yes.
Oh, Nick Shirley.
Yes. Correct.
Yes.
And what happened as a result of that? Dumb kid, superficial positions, hijacks the algorithm, literally, definitionally, causes ICE to be deployed to Minnesota in record numbers that results in federal killings of U.S. citizens unseen in the U.S. history since fucking, I don't even know when. And Ezra can't connect the dots on any of this. He can't even have the conversation. He's not following the...
With superficial ideological spectacle is somehow therefore a symbolic of where the right is going as a whole.
I think hyperreal is doing work in this argument that is not actually connected to what hyperreal means. I can imagine somebody sitting in front of me, even sitting in front of me here in 2015, and us younger, handsomer.
Yes.
And you tell me this about Donald Trump.
Tell me what.
That listen.
Yeah, but
you
you're
all are
past
being
that.
easily
That
provoked.
is true, but
you're
you're
looking
past...
at a hyperreal, algorithmically oriented attentional spectacle. and treating it like it's a serious political force. And then maybe if I had been wiser about what Donald Trump represented and the way in which the hyperreal and the real were going to converge in the life that we actually lead here, I would have said,
sure, okay, he's
no,
kind of there.
attention is the fundamental currency of modern American politics.
Sure.
Things that are, we have actually fewer defenses against things that feel fundamentally ridiculous. Things that are, this is an era of the trickster spirit, not the earnest energies. And many people like me, I mean, you may remember this, Huffington Post initially would only cover Donald Trump's campaign in its celebrity and entertainment news section.
Is that right? I don't remember that.
Because
That's
he
very
was
funny.
a ridiculous hyperreal.
I don't remember that. I don't remember that. He absolutely
Undefeated.
does. And he's lying because the whole talking point about Trump, and I guarantee you, I would fucking bet my balls on it. God crush my balls if I'm lying on this, that this guy himself has said the line, Trump got millions of dollars of unearned free advertising. Nobody took Trump seriously in the beginning, and that was their problem. They didn't take us seriously. Nobody took Trump seriously, and they tried to make a mockery out of him, but he resembled and represented the average American way more than the fucking out-of-touch loser fucking media, blah, 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 blah. Guarantee you this guy has said these exact words before. And now he's like, oh, I don't remember the media not taking Trump seriously. Oh, you're right.
Spectacle, and to treat it as a serious thing would have been absurd. I think many of us were perfectly willing to say Nick Fuentes is a marginal, absurdist figure. And then it became clear in the Tucker Carlson moment, and given where Tucker has gone, that there's like a conveyor belt of these ideas, and they go from the fringe to the far right to the slightly less far right to Donald Trump.
Okay, well, here's where I would disagree. And you actually have a real world test, right? These kind of ideological media figures are playing a very different game than Donald Trump was playing, and you know that because Donald Trump actually played the game. He announced for president, and he, against the odds, against many of the institutions, he won. And so you have to say, yeah, Trump also uses media, but that's like, that's a superficial comparison. You have to say, what is the actual goal? And the goal for like the streamers is not to pass legislation, it's not to win elections, it's not to cobble together a majority, but it's in fact, it's kind of a narcissistic endeavor to get personal attention. And so, but that's the end point. There's no actual bridge that can go over. And look, that's
a lie. He's correct in that. He is right in that analysis, but there is a bridge, and the bridge is the Conservative Party that's realized that. Imagine what narcissistic streamer YouTuber people, they don't care about policy outcomes. True, so let's make them care. Let's make them care. What would be the best thing we could do with a bunch of narcissistic streamer people? How about giving all of them the fucking Epstein file binder, and having them fucking pose in front of the fucking Capitol?
Too.
Yeah. What better narcissistic endeavor than this? Than connecting policy and politics to narcissistic streamers? Or how about this? What if we actually fucking start having a week or two where we literally host podcasts in the fucking White House, where we bring these fucking losers in, these Charlie Kirk losers, these Benny Johnson losers, we bring them into the actual White House and have them do podcast episodes in here. You are connecting and this guy knows
We're also
it.
having people in the cabinet whose wives are doing podcast
Sure.
episodes with fucking everybody.
Yeah.
It's retarded.
And this guy's acting incredulous that there's no connection here. There's not on the left. He's right on that. On the left, there's not, because Ezra sure as fuck is not connected to any part of the Democratic Party doing anything effective right now. That is true. And that's why Ezra can't fathom it, because he hasn't stepped outside of this world. He's part of the infinitely cucked lib left. He's part of the infinitely cucked lib left. Being the lib left is like doing mushrooms or LSD, but instead of fractals, it is infinitely generated images of BBC plowing your fucking party for tunnels and tunnels and tunnels for infinite periods of time. That's what it's like being on the lib left. Ezra's in the tunnel right now, and he's taking us all along for the ride.
But can't it change minds, and can't it change people's politics?
It could change minds, but not to the extent that you think, because people look at it more as a form of entertainment.
But but the White House connects it. They intentionally connect it. And Ezra can't even fathom that, because the lib left, the Democrats can't do it. The Democrats can't connect it. They haven't. Ezra's not a part of this.
Soap opera, personality drama, than an actual viable political move. And so, yeah, I think that you're kind of conflating the media spectacle with the fundamental political arena. And I think that boundary is not as permeable as you're suggesting. And in fact, to make that boundary...
That boundary is non-existent for the Republican Party, for MAGA. They have taken spectacle and they have turned it into politics. All of it. Trump is a spectacle person. What do you call it when Trump is tweeting out, tonight, a civilization is going to end? What is that if not spectacle? It has to be spectacle, because these guys themselves say that Trump's not being serious. What is that if not spectacle? We have a president who engages with social media more than any other fucking boomer on the planet. What is that if not spectacle? It's social. It's public. It's media. It's the news. It's the president of the United States. How is that not political? It's about things that are happening politically. How is that not policy? You want to talk about hyper reality? Yeah, we're holding UFC championships on the fucking lawn of the White House. What the fuck? How is that not spectacle?
More explicit is better, in my view, for my own kind of political desire, but also better for the country. And so when I see, the kind of Online, right, and the New York Times, both doing like puff pieces on the latest kind of right-wing figure, right? It was David Duke, and then it was Richard Spencer, and now it's Nick Fuentes. This is a stock character in American discourse, and I just refuse to take the bait.
I don't think David Duke is a marginal figure. I mean, I will say
You don't
this.
think David Duke is a marginal
Here's
figure?
what I mean. I think John Gans, who's
Oh my
he's a great Substack and is a sort of interesting history-based theorist of American politics. He's got this book about the 90s called When the Clock Broke, I believe. And I've had him on to talk about the book. And the argument he would make about David Duke, about a bunch of figures who rose in that period, Patrick Buchanan, Samuel Francis, is that if you look at what they were figuring out about politics, I mean, David Duke, by the way, we should note, ran for office. He did not come that far from winning for Louisiana governor. In the 90s.
Who
And,
cares?
you know, there was a style...
Bro, the 90s? Motherfuckers were popping their AOL CDs into their fucking DVD drive. I'm sorry. It would have been CD drives. There weren't even DVDs yet. To get on the fucking internet. What do you... Bro, politics is... Why are we talking about this right now? Holy shit.
Of politics that they got kind of quite good at figuring out. And Gans's view, and I agree with this view, is that much of what the populist right is today is built on that, often quite explicitly with Samuel Francis and others. Okay, make your case.
Absolutely not. I mean, look, for those of us who are... Look, I'm in the institutional right. I know the people. I know the personalities. I know the organizations. That figure... is a pain in the ass. Nobody wants it. Nobody likes it. Nobody believes in it. And in fact, that figure, as we found out recently with the revelations about the Southern Poverty Law Center, is not only a useful tool for institutions on the left, but in many cases was actually secretly funded by the kind of left-wing civil rights outfit known as the SPLC.
Which we were talking about David Duke?
Not David Duke in particular, who knows? But I'm saying that...
You're saying David Duke is maybe a left-wing plant?
Yes.
I think that's
Why are you laughing, you fucking retard? He's so fucking stupid. That's the entire point of the SPLC indictments, you fucking moron. He even alluded to it. I'm sorry. That was the entire point of the SPLC indictment. That was the entire thing that he was referencing earlier. When he said earlier, he literally said these movements would have been too weak to exist if not for the massive funding coming from the SPLC, which ironically enough was a right-wing obscure talking point that was then made politics and mainstream by the Department of Justice, by Trump's Department of Justice. Another example of connecting a fucking meme that, oh, everybody's an Antifa plan, everybody's blah, 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 into a fucking political reality, which is, oh, here we've got some bullshit indictments for the SPLC, so every fucking loser can use the talking point that all of the Nazis that we disavowed in the past and said weren't even real, now we're going to acknowledge they were real, but they were funded by the left. This is how is Ezra surprised by that statement? Wait, what? You think that they were majority funded? What? How can that be a surprise to you? What do you think the point of those indictments were? Does Ezra Klein legitimately think that the only way those organizations could exist was with SPLC funding? Is that what he thinks?
Who knows? But I'm saying that...
You're saying David Duke is maybe a left-wing plant?
Yes.
100%. I think that's ridiculous.
I'm not saying that in the sense of totally wholly created, but certainly used by, right? The whole idea was...
Please bring up... hold on. Oh, God, I'm so close. I'm going to come. Please bring up the fact that... wasn't Hillary and Bill like in a picture with fucking David Duke like 50 years ago or something? Wasn't this a talking point at one point? I forget all the older KKK talking points for the conservatives. I feel like this was a thing or something, or he attended a wing or something.
Was this kind of smear effect where the media would go out and say this bad person, supports your campaign, and then you'd have to disavow and go through this whole kind of routine.
But the point I'm kind of interested in here is, I mean, my view, and I think this is a fairly wide held view, is my worry is that the institutional right is getting steamrolled.
By whom? Yeah.
In many cases, in order to survive, it is dramatically changing what it is, like the Heritage Foundation.
Sure.
In other cases, by Donald Trump. Donald Trump was not the candidate of the institute.
Sure. Notice how the only thing that guy agreed with her is the Heritage Foundation. Why? Because it's a little bit too like mainstreamish Republican. I don't know if the Heritage Foundation is fully bought into like the Jews control everything. Like that was the only really. That's the thing that you're going to agree is like, oh yeah, they're maybe a little bit too captured. The Heritage Foundation, really?
Institutional right. If the institutional right had its way, Jeb Bush would have been the nominee. I mean, the idea that the institutional right has been racking up victory after victory is ridiculous. I mean, the Republicans saw speaker after speaker after speaker until they got one who was more like properly compliant.
Sure.
The institutional right has not had a strong winning record. And again, part of my argument here is that I think this is because
has not had a strong winning record, bro. They were entirely supplanted in 2016. I'm sorry, where have you been, Ezra? The entire institutional lawmaker, every part of the right has been supplanted for a decade. Are you not in politics? Am I crazy right now? Where the fuck are these people at? What have they been watching or doing?
Because it keeps thinking it can maybe control these forces and it can't. You asked me earlier to sort of be more specific on a story. So I want to talk about a story you did. In November, you wrote a piece with the title, "The Largest Funder of Al-Shabaab is the Minnesota Taxpayer." Tell me what the piece was about.
Sure. So this was a feature investigation that we did in Minnesota looking into organized Somali fraud. And so we spent a number of months on this piece. We went out to Minnesota. We reviewed court documents. We interviewed law enforcement, both on the record, on background. And then our story, and this had been kind of bubbling up in local press and bits and pieces, was that in fact Somali fraudsters were exploiting Minnesota and federal welfare programs, autism programs, daycare programs, Medicaid programs, and looting billions of dollars from American taxpayers. And this was a story that really blew open the Somali fraud story on the national stage. And then since then,
it was a huge amount of money. Well, I thought it was $250 million for the big case for the Feeding Our Future, whatever. Is there something else released about this? There might have been that I missed it.
And as sometimes happens when you report on an explosive story, it kind of ricocheted into an entire movement, really looking at large-scale fraud in American public institutions.
So this
really large-scale fraud. It ricocheted into large-scale fraud for the American public institutions. That's it. That's where we're gonna just that on all, for all of them. It wasn't hyper-focused on one particular thing or one particular type of people, or.
A couple pieces of this. So as you know, the fraud had been, reported elsewhere at the Star Tribune, and it had been
Bits
in
and
national
pieces,
news.
yeah.
Yeah, there are bits and pieces. There were prosecutions, right, which is where a lot of the information came from. It began in 2022 under the Biden administration. The big sort of move you made in this was to say this is financing foreign terrorism. What was that argument?
Sure. I mean, the argument is pretty simple, and the mechanics of it are this. So we have billions of dollars being stolen by Somali fraudsters in Minnesota. We then have huge amounts of money being transported out of Minneapolis Airport, Seattle Airport, in cash, in actual physical currency, in suitcases that goes to Mogadishu. And then when in Mogadishu, it is distributed through various parts of the country through what is called the Hawala Network. Hawala Network is the name for kind of informal, cash-based, clan-based financial institutions. They don't have a strong formal banking system in Somalia. It's a rough part of the world. And so they have these couriers that move money in cash. And all kinds of think tanks, military, U.S. government, Department of Justice,
I don't know anything about this story, so I haven't done any research. Do you think Ezra Klein knows anything about this story and he's done some level of research, or?
Probably not.
Democrats have essentially made the case that Al-Shabaab is taking a cut of Hawala financing. And so when we talked with federal law enforcement agents and investigators who have been working on this case, they told us that the flow of funds was this: from the taxpayer out of the airport in suitcases to the Hawala networks in Somalia, and therefore to the Al-Shabaab terror networks taking their cut. Essentially, like we have Visa that takes like 3% of your credit card transactions. In parts of Somalia, Al-Shabaab takes a cut. Not exactly sure how much that is, and federal investigators say, hey, once it exits the country into the Hawala system, you can't claw that money back. There are no written receipts or banking transactions. But the scale of that money that was remittances from fraud was so enormous that over time we're talking about huge sums of money.
So I want to take a beat on whether or not this turned out to be true. So the key named source in your story was a retired terrorism investigator named Glenn Kearns. He later came out, claimed that he was misquoted. He said later the story was bullshit.
Oh, so we're going to finally get into the weeds on one particular story, and holy fuck, thank God, Ezra Klein may be fucking prepared for this one section. Well, while letting him fucking mentally destroy us for the past hour and a half. Finally, maybe. Okay.
And that he did no on-the-ground investigating in Minnesota. The two top prosecutors of the fraud in Minnesota said the perpetrators were motivated by greed. There's no evidence of terrorist financing. Do you still stand by that?
Of course I do, yeah. And a couple things. So the Glenn Kearns detective is very odd. We have him.
One of the, some guy said this in my Kiwi Farm thread, actually, and it's true. One of the ways, I've said this a lot, that you can tell, I call this that table thing, that you can always tell somebody's full of shit, is when they have a belief, that belief is based on some pieces of evidence, and then you go through the evidence, and every time you take away some piece of evidence, the belief actually gets stronger. Like, what the that shows you that the belief was never founded on evidence in the first place. Oh, I call this the floating table, right? How much weight can this table hold? 100 pounds. Well, I kicked one leg out. How much can it hold now? Now it can hold 150. Okay, I kicked the second one. It's almost ready. Now it can hold 300 pounds. Okay, it has no legs now. Is it on the ground? No, my table can hold 10,000 pounds floating in the air. Like, it's fucking retarded.
On the record, we have a transcript of his interview. I'm not sure what happened. My suspicion is that when this story blew up into a huge national story, he got spooked or scared. But the paper in Minneapolis tried to go through our piece and with a kind of criticism, couldn't lay a glove on it. Didn't debunk or even really contradict any of our points. You had one source who knows, don't know his personal circumstances. But
he was the only named source.
I don't think he was the only named source in the piece.
He was the only named source making this terrorism argument.
Well, incorrect. So we had multiple high-level federal officials who confirmed to us the flow of funds. We substantiated it with contextual reporting from Foundation.
Confirmed the flow of funds? As in, once funds were in another country, they could go anywhere? Like, I don't understand, like, the argument that, like, I fund terrorism in every country on the planet if we're going to make that argument. Because when I buy something, if I donate $20 to Melina's stream, I send her $20, and she goes and she spends that money on Swedish extremist terrorists. Am I funding terrorism? Like, what is that argument? The connection is so loose. You need an intentionality at the start to say that it's funding terrorism. Otherwise, the argument is bullshit. Or you need a significant percentage of the funds to be hijacked. Not just like the flow of funds. Anytime somebody says some shit like the flow of funds, what do you mean? What percentage of the fund? Do people know about this at all points in the transaction? How much are we talking?
Defense of democracies, from the United States Military Academy, from the Department of Justice. We were saying simply, logically, if we know from a variety of sources that Al-Shabaab is skimming off the Hawala network, and we know from a variety of sources that money is moving through that network from fraud committed in the United States, it's a logical syllogism, right? A, B, C.
A logical syllogism. What a fucking joke. Are you oh my God. It's okay.
And so we know that this to be true. And I think that idea that because they weren't motivated by terrorism is not something we alleged and is essentially irrelevant. The facts as they played out were that...
Do you see what he just said? It wasn't motivated by terrorism. They didn't. So it's exactly what I just said. It's exactly what I just said. Money is going to some country. Once that money's in that country, it's impossible to say where exactly it goes. And there are bad elements in that country that can skim money off the top of any money in that country. Therefore, anything happening in the United States is funding terrorism. Like, it's...
something we alleged and is essentially irrelevant. The facts as they played out were that through that network from fraud committed in the United States, it's a logical syllogism, right? A, B, C. And so we know that this to be true. And I think that idea that because they weren't motivated by terrorism is not something we alleged and is essentially irrelevant. The facts as they played out were that the Al-Shabaab terror network benefits from fraud in the United States that has passed through their financial system.
Your piece is actually quite careful, right? I've read the piece, I've read it carefully. And you're right, you don't allege that the point of this is to fund terrorists. Then when you sort of promote the piece, your tweet is, Somalis are stealing billions of dollars from American taxpayers.
Good job. You're getting a little bit more into the context because the piece will never do that. The piece doesn't have to do that. All the piece has to do is lay some weak factual foundation and then they can narrativize the rest.
Sending cash to terrorists back home. It's time for @real Donald Trump to revoke temporary protected status for all Somali nationals in the United States. It's time for them to go home. And
he's going to argue that it's factually true. Somalis are stealing billions of dollars from American taxpayers and sending cash to terrorists back home. He's going to say that it's factually true. But what do you think when you read this? That there is an intentionality here. That they're literally stealing money from American taxpayers because they want to send it to terrorists. Not that it happens to be that some terrorists might skim some part of that cash, maybe if it goes to some part of a country, maybe.
@real Donald Trump to revoke temporary protected status for all Somali nationals in the United States. It's time for them to go home. And I have, I think, 2 or 3 issues here.
2 or 3, all right. Let's go through them one by one.
Yeah, we'll do them. I'll give them to you. You have a limited number of people, right, committing crimes. They're being prosecuted, right? The prosecutions begin under Biden. This is not like a swept under the rug thing. You guys did not come up with this. You didn't find it yourself. And they were stealing a lot of money. I mean, that part is true. The sending cash to terrorists back home, as you say, you have a more complicated
view. To the piece, and then you could... Like, so,
why even say complicated? It's misleading. It's a fucking lie. It's misleading. It's a fucking lie. You're giving an intentionally incorrect view of how those people are intending their funds to be used. I don't support the Chinese Communist Party. I do not personally support it. Would you ever come out and make the argument that Destiny has supported the Chinese Communist Party with thousands and thousands of dollars? In fact, Destiny and his groomed minor friend, Mr. Mouton, were directly sending money to Chinese communist state-owned enterprises in the form of buying skins on League of Legends that had a percentage huge equity stake was owned by Tencent, which is a Chinese Communist Party state-owned enterprise company. Like, it's such a stupidly fucking misleading statement. Like, you're not even remotely in the realm of truth or truthful reporting here. Why even pretend? Why even give them any credit at all?
The sending cash to terrorists back home, as you say, you have a more complicated view.
To the piece, and then you could, so your rhetorical...
And then, none of the people, as far as I can tell, were doing this, were under temporary protected status, which is only about 750 people, right? So there's this move to say it's not just like some criminals, it's Somalis. And it's not just some money is being skimmed because of a weak banking sector, it's they're funding terrorism. And then it's to get Donald Trump to deport people who are unrelated to the crime.
Okay, so a couple points on that particular argument. So the point of the piece, broadly, it raises the question of immigration.
And now he's going to do the thing that we did with the mass migration with Tucker Carlson earlier. Can nobody see the maneuvers? Does nobody know politics on the No. Earlier, they had a segment where they talked about how Tucker Carlson says that mass migration is being intentionally done by institutional aspects of the United States in order to invade and destroy the white population by replacing it with a foreign-born population for demographic change. Okay, this is a neo-Nazi great replacement conspiracy theory. And then this guy was like, well, let's back up. Like, he is right that there's a lot of immigrants coming to the United States, and it's like, that's not the fucking point. And it sounds like he's about to back off this now. It's like, well, there was fraud.
The point of the piece, broadly, it raises the question of immigration, cultural compatibility. And if you talk to people with an expert in Somali culture, as we did, and the history of Somalia, as we did, you get the clear sense that in Somalia, there is a kind of kinship and clan-based culture that is prevalent for a variety of historical and social reasons. And because there has been a weak central government, contested central government in Somalia in the modern period, there is a feeling that exploiting the central government is permissible. And I think the underlying point, which is very uncomfortable, not just for people who are small.
A clan-based government, a clan-based system where members of the family are favored, where there is a huge benefit to exploiting the favor that you might get from said central. What? Who the fuck does this sound like right now, by the way? What was the largest DOD contract ever written to Eric Trump's fucking retard company? What was the Jared Kushner flying around the world with that Witkoff retard who doesn't even know where the fuck Russia is on a map, is trying to be our lead negotiator using Russian-provided translators, who has this World Liberty Financial that Trump is enriching himself with? Like, the businesses that have to go to Trump and personally beg for forgiveness in order for him to greenlight their companies to get through tariffs? What, the Swiss people who sent him a fucking watch for a reprieve from tariffs? Like, who does this sound like? Bro, I'm getting psyoped so hard. I don't even know if this is a real person. Maybe Ezra's just replaced by a fucking robot.
Permissible. And I think the underlying point, which is very uncomfortable, not just for people who are small L liberals, but even for many conservatives, is that actually all national cultures are not equal. And in fact, because immigration is a group-based or national border-based system, you have to be prudent in which nations of origin you prioritize in immigration. And so I think the record on Somalis in the United States and elsewhere on many of those metrics is not good. You have low levels of education, high levels of welfare dependency, and you have these cultural incompatibilities, let's say. And so, again, in a prudent national interest-based immigration policy, I would put Somalis down lower on the list, and I think that's perfectly defensible.
Who are probably some of the most, I actually don't know for Somalis because there's been a lot of them. I know, like, for Kenyans and Ugandans, I think they're some of the highest educated, highest compensated groups in the United States, just because they tend to come over because they're more educated. But it's not like we're taking, like, truckloads of Somalis en masse. It's not like
I wish we were.
All the poor. Why?
Well, they make good food.
Okay. We're not like just popped in and haven't seen this video. Where does Rufo rank among MAGA demons in your eyes? Less than Ezra Klein does, who I don't know. He should not be having these conversations. Ezra should not be having these conversations. He doesn't understand the political climate. He doesn't understand the environment. He doesn't know how to do propaganda. He doesn't know how to recognize propaganda. He doesn't seem to have a strong command of historical fact when it means standing up to the person he's talking to ever. I don't know what this is, except for like for basically laundering every single conservative that comes through his program. Like,
national interest-based immigration policy, I would put Somalis down lower on the list, and I think that's perfectly defensible.
I don't have a problem saying that American immigration policy should serve our interests. Sure. Should not just be omnidirectional.
We just grant all of that. Okay, good, true.
Saying is that to take a crime committed by a limited number of people, then say this is something about an entire group of people, and you should deport these unrelated people, like that is a bad thing to do. And
that's not what he argued, though. I don't know if you're even in the realm of understanding the ideology. What he just told you was they analyzed the country. He's not using the word race because he knows that would be like a trigger point for you. So he's just speaking around it, like a 6-year-old trying to win a debate against a 4-year-old is basically what's happening here. But he already said they analyzed the country, the culture, the nation, the history, and they know that there are just certain groups of people that you don't want here from countries, not ethnically, but just from certain countries. So it doesn't matter that you're telling me that some Somalis haven't committed crimes. He knows that they're more likely to.
People, and you should deport these unrelated people. Like that is a bad thing to do. And to yoke this sort of larger argument you're making to this much more kind of tendentious, well, some of the money that goes because of this fucked up system back in Somalia can get taken by Al-Shabaab. To finish the thought, and then I'll let you take it where you want to take it. That is, and that's part of this larger point I'm trying to make to you, which is that you are not putting like passion in service of reason. You're unleashing things here that are like first going to really harm people.
Like, I don't know if Ezra is like not understanding it. Like, Ezra, what you're identifying is a thing that he doesn't want to acknowledge because it's intentional. Like, I don't know if he just doesn't realize that, right? It's like having a conversation with a frat boy and you're like, you are dumping tons of GHB or Rohypnol or whatever the fuck into this drink that you're serving to these girls. Like, we need to have a conversation about what happens when people take this. Because I don't know if you're aware of this, but I think that when you're serving these drinks to these women, and then when they're passed out naked, and you and your boys are fucking her afterwards, you might actually be, maybe, like, that might be rape. So we need to talk about, like, mass dumping, like, all of this stuff into these drinks. We need to have a serious conversation about this. And it's like, are you fucking retarded? You're acting like you're helping him to discover that he's using a strategy that might lead to bad outcomes when this guy is intentionally using that strategy because he wants the bad outcomes.
Nothing wrong, right? These Somali temporary protected status, I mean, many, as you say, Somalia's a tough place. Many people flee it for completely reasonable reasons, and we, honor them for doing so and trying to make a better life for them and their families. Like,
you
they
think
did
this
nothing
guy wants
wrong. I think you actually do
refugees,
believe from many things you've written in, like, the primacy of thinking about the individual. If you want to say that our immigration policy should not favor Somalis, fine, fair enough.
But our immigration, the temporary protected status is based on group designations, and in fact, Somalis, Haitians,
but the people are going there who did not do this crime. Right? We agree on that part, right?
Hold on. Well, let me take it in pieces. So
you can't pull a single concession out of him. He can't even get one single concession out of him. Do not recognize the asymmetry here? You can't get one single concession out of him.
A couple kind of factual problems here. You said a limited number of people committed these crimes. I'm actually not sure that that's true. And
Thank you.
And I'll explain it.
Correct. That's right. Genotype is what causes phenotype. To these people, to a race realist, and I now know, I don't give a fuck what this guy is a race realist. He is a white identitarian. He's a white nationalist. He believes in phenotype is the characteristic that emerges from a genetic thing. Okay, phenotype is a physical thing that emerges, and then the genotype is the genes. People believe, like this guy, believe that certain genetic clusters of people, certain ethnic backgrounds, will always produce a certain thing. Culture to these people is a phenotype, and there's an underlying genetic background that emits certain cultures. That's what they believe. And if you go back and you listen to what this guy says, or if you listen to what he's about to say, everything will map on perfectly to that. All right? It doesn't matter that some Somalis have been caught. There's probably more that have done it. It doesn't matter that some haven't done it. Eventually they will. We know, because we know the country they come from. We know their background. We know their history. We know what they do now. We know all the crime there now. It's because it's necessary. It's an essential part of their ethnic identity.
Couple kind of factual problems here. You said a limited number of people committed these crimes. I'm actually not sure that that's true, and I'll explain it why I believe that. If you look at the actual schemes committed by Somalis, for example, for autism services, you had members of the Somali community opening up fake clinics with fake patients that were receiving, kind of fake treatment. And what we're looking at is actually a non-insignificant number of people that were involved or had knowledge of these schemes as they were unfolding, because you're talking about thousands of patients, larger family sizes, and secondarily, prosecutors told us over and over and over, we're just looking at the tip of the iceberg. We don't have the prosecutors, we don't have the investigators, we don't have the manpower to actually unravel all of these fraud schemes. And so let's just say the median estimate, kind of responsible estimate, is $5 billion. Well, they've only uncovered fraud schemes in maybe $300 million. And so,
like, we're doing an estimate from an estimate from an estimate. You're saying, well, they didn't have the resources to get everybody, so we're just going to go ahead and assume that the same level of fraud exists all throughout this. Like, it's not even a good way to make an estimate. So that did he say billions or tens of billions earlier, fraud is actually only 300 million of discovered fraud. And then it's just, trust me, bro, there's billions and billions more that we haven't uncovered yet. Bro, give me a fucking break.
So that would indicate that actually the vast majority of the schemes were simply kind of vanishing through your fingers. And so you're actually getting what I believe is, because also the Somali community is very concentrated in geographically tightly integrated in kinship networks, I actually think you're getting the complicity or knowledge of actually a non-insignificant part of this community. Are most Somalis in Minnesota?
That.
I think it's just logical, and I think that we can make this
syllogism. He used this term earlier when he said syllogism, logical. Like, I just don't think Ezra. He's just not equipped to have these conversations. Whatever, dude.
You make the argument with a high degree of certainty based on the court documents, based on the total of fraud committed, and based on how these things are structured. And then look, this is mass fraud committed in Minnesota, committed now in other states that we're uncovering. And one West Coast police detective who has been looking into this said, I've been looking into this for 30 years, and organized fraud rings.
One investigator we talked to, one prosecutor we talked to, one investigator we talked to. Remember, when it comes to Donald Trump, having like a story where it's like 5 sources inside the State Department, by the New York Times. 5 what? Doesn't matter. Anonymous. Don't believe him. Doesn't matter. Anonymous? Why the fuck would I believe this person? Meanwhile, their guys, we talked to an investigator. We talked to a guy who, none of this is in court documents. None of this is in charging documents. None of this has been shown or leaked from subpoenas, grand jury testimony, nothing, right? But trust me, bro. Give me a break, bro.
His experience are committed to a massively disproportionate amount by foreign nationals and groups of originating from migrant groups.
So
foreign nationals and groups of originating from migrant groups.
So,
what kinds?
This is a fact. It's uncomfortable. It's uncomfortable.
I didn't argue. I didn't argue
It's an uncomfortable truth,
so
bro.
the question,
I've not done my own reporting on this,
but hold on. But the question then is, how do we respond to that politically? And so I actually think
I want to talk about how it got responded to politically. So Donald Trump did what you wanted.
Oh my
to do.
God!
He,
So we grant all of that
he
now.
put up a Truth Social post on Thanksgiving Day. Did you call it iconic? Is that right? You know this. You called it iconic. In which he says,
I didn't know. I didn't even know.
but Truth Social post on Thanksgiving Day. Did you call it iconic?
Is that right?
You know this. You called it iconic. In which he says, you sure did.
All right, let's hear
in
it.
which he says, hundreds
Laugh
of
along.
thousands of refugees from Somalia are completely taking over the once great state of Minnesota. Somalian gangs are roving the streets looking for prey as our wonderful people stay locked in their apartments and houses, hoping hope that they will be left alone. But then it kind of moved.
If you were reading like a tweet from like Joe Biden or Kamala Harris saying things like, "We believe that black people have faced inequities in this nation's history," this guy's frown would be fucking falling off his face. His frowny face would be he would look like the girl from Obsession. Like, are you saying bad things about American treatment of black people? He would be so fucking ass pained if he was saying it. But Trump, it's all giggles and laughs and sunshine because he agrees with it all. He agrees with it all. Make no mistake.
Streets looking for prey as our wonderful people stay locked in their apartments and houses, hoping
Okay,
hope that they will be left alone.
Yeah.
But then it kind of moves on from there. So then Nick Shirley, the right-wing influencer, launches his own investigation of Somali fraud in Minnesota. He starts going to daycares and knocking on them and being like, "Hey, are there kids here?" And these women come out and they don't speak English and they're like looking at him strangely. This gets I think like 130 million views across platforms. It goes crazily viral.
Yeah,
but I want to play this clip. You did this podcast conversation with Richard Hanania where you guys were talking about this, and I think what you say is interesting.
Sure.
If you look at the Nick Shirley video and you really dig into it, there are two things happening. Okay, on the surface, he's shining a spotlight on something that is very real, that is a kind of endemic form of corruption, and he's bringing it to life through kind of Zoomer style, YouTube, kind of gonzo video production. Okay. It draws attention to a real issue. It's driving politics in the right direction, and it's, I think, overall beneficial. Granted, your critique of what's happening under the surface is also true. I mean, I couldn't publish the conclude. You know, Nick Shirley gets in there, sees the building is empty, and then assumes, oh, they're committing $70 million of fraud or whatever. As a journalist, as someone who has to go through fact-checking, legal review.
Holy shit! And he does understand it, right? He understands the concept, this hyper-reality concept, right? He goes in, he sees an empty office, and he says, "There's fraud." Ha 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 ha. Like so what? Like an empty office in some hyper-reality, like that kind of is a stand-in or represents. It's a sort of symbol that's created that resembles like mass fraud in society, because an office is supposed to be a place that has people staffed with it, and since there's no staffing, it must be fraud. He understands the concept, right? That this is a fucking loony weirdo that is engaged in some kind of that is showing us a hyper reality, and then is about to do politics based off that. So he does understand all of this. He's just taking Ezra around for a ride in the driveway on his tricycle. That is what he's doing for this podcast.
Oh, they're committing $70 million of fraud or whatever. As a journalist, as someone who has to go through fact-checking, legal review, kind of peer scrutiny, I kind of clam up and I'm like, oh, wow, man, you're about to get sued because what you're saying is just not defensible as a journalistic process.
So the reason I found that to be such an interesting quote is that I feel like both sides of what we're talking about are in there. You know, this video is not strong. Let's put it that way. That there's a lot. You can't go and be like, "Show me your kids," and when they don't show the kids, be like, "This is a fraud. You don't have any kids." On the other hand, you have this contrary feeling that, well, it may not be
Did
true.
you hear that
Like, this is a fraud. You don't have any kids.
Said the same about white people. This guy would be losing his fucking mind. This is also why I hate bigots and racists. They're so fucking fragile, and they think it's so goofy and funny whenever they're making fun of other people and they can't handle anything on their own side. They're the weakest that the white race has to offer every single fucking time.
On the other hand, you have this contrary feeling that, well, it may not be true, but it puts attention towards something real. It's like in line with where I want politics to go. It does become a huge issue. We'll talk about like what it leads to.
Oh my God, you're describing the exact same thing
like,
earlier that he said doesn't
tension.
happen.
So I mean, how do you balance that?
Yeah, I mean, well, first of all, it's a free country. Everyone has the First Amendment right, and so therefore, you can't say I don't like this for these reasons. Therefore, you shouldn't be able to do it. But I think
so the ADL and the SPLC and everybody else has a First Amendment right? Yeah? Hello? Where were those arguments earlier? Remember, the Democrats must act with supreme morality at all points in time. They're the adults in the room. They have to act proper. However, whatever is legally permissible is allowed and should be that way, culturally preserved.
It's just another instance, an example of the right being under-institutionalized. And so what I would say is that an ideal, say, outcome or method would be to take someone that has charisma, that has courage, that has curiosity, someone like Nick Shirley, and then integrate that person into an institution to put up those...
This did happen. He had official support from X, and he had all of the paperwork and everything that was given to him by Republican Party insiders. This isn't even contested. It's known. The guy that was even in the video in the first place with him, I think was a Republican Party dude, and they tried to launder the same story a year earlier on the local media networks. The same exact claims with the same exact places. This is known. But he's just pretending otherwise because Ezra doesn't know.
guardrails to refine and really improve the product itself, and then to use that attention toward productive ends. And so that would be like the ideal. That's the kind of thing that I think would be good. But the reality is that on the right, the media is so fragmented, and the media institutions are not that strong, not that well developed.
Fucking lie.
And in many cases,
strong.
highly risk averse.
They're so strong. They're so developed. Highly risk averse. You're telling me that the same Republican Party that somehow was able to break bread with fucking Andrew Tate is risk averse? That was putting crazy podcasters? Benny Johnson, who was part of an organization that was found to have been illegally funded by Russian money through illegal wire transfers and fraudulent wire transfers, they put that guy in the White House to do a podcast. That's risk averse? Steve Bannon, the founder of Breitbart, or I think he inherited. I don't think he was a founder, but he got control of it later. That they put that guy as a Trump surrogate. That's a risk averse people. Donald Trump, who tweets out the craziest shit you've ever seen in your entire fucking life, like it's a fucking daily task on not Stardew Valley.
Problem?
What's the name of the stupid fucking game? What am I thinking of? Animal Crossing. Do you have daily tasks on Animal Crossing? I hate this motherfucker. Oh my God, get me out.
Reasons, and therefore there's an entire territory that is ceded to people. I don't even know if Nick Shirley is right wing. I'm not sure I would even categorize him as that. I think the story landed in that particular manner. But you have people, independent, obvious reasons, and therefore there's an entire territory that is ceded to people. I don't even know if Nick Shirley is right wing. I'm not sure I would even categorize him as that. I think the story landed in that particular manner. But you have people, independent.
He's not left wing.
Let's say citizen journalists. I think that was the phrase for a while. There was great hope in the citizen journalist. Love citizens, love journalists. Citizen journalist is one of those things. Like, it sounds good in theory, but in practice there are some real limitations. And so it is what it is. What are you going to do about it? This is the kind of thing where, as an individual, my only reaction is to say, you can put out a kind of suggestion for remedy, but it's not within my direct control.
I guess the thing I'm asking, not as an individual, but as an activist and an analyst and somebody influential in the administration that responds to these stories, yours, his, by deploying a giant ICE and Border Patrol deployment to Minnesota. That deployment ultimately, and the fighting around it, leaves Renee Good and Alex Preddy dead. Minneapolis calculated the economic impact of the raids at least around $700 million. Joe Thompson, the acting U.S. attorney in Minnesota, who was leading the fraud investigations, he was quoted quite a bit in your original piece. He resigns in anger after Trump's Department of Justice demands his office investigate Renee Good's wife. So, to me, I look at all this and I say, that wasn't beneficial. This was catastrophic. It harmed people's lives. It led to people dying. It was bad for the Minnesota economy.
Good, the rioter?
It led to the fraud stuff getting, completely sidelined, and the person who was pushing it resigning. That this did not go in a good direction, in part because it wasn't based on good information. But now, looking back at the whole thing, do you disagree with that?
Yeah, I would disagree. So, well,
of course,
I would agree with certain points, but I would refine them and disagree with others. So, the fraud work is continuing. The vice president is now chairing an anti-fraud task force. They've significantly increased the manpower to look into fraud. That said, it was a bad strategic decision to deploy force, Customs and Border Patrol, ICE agents, with that kind of force posture. It's a no-win situation. And I was advising against it from even the previous summer. And so in that particular case, I would say it was ill-advised. And I think that finally the administration has learned that. They reshuffled DHS, they reshuffled Customs and Border Patrol. And if you want to create deportations at scale of illegal immigrants, you have to do so in what I've kind of called an invisible manner, in a personal manner. You have to change banking regulations, financial transfers, remittance fees, employment verification to incentivize self-deportation. Because the idea that you could deport people by simply sending in armored cars with ICE agents on the side is delusional. It's never going to happen. I think there's part of the right that wants that kind of macho imagery, but if you look at the underlying substantive policy that you want to enact, I think it's detrimental. And in fact, the situation in Minneapolis, again, in that sense, did not achieve the stated objective for reasons that I and others had predicted.
Pick up on the front.
And to me, it's also it's annoying to me personally.
What were his tweets, by the way, when ICE was doing their massive deportation, or I'm sorry, their massive deployment out to Minnesota? Was he actually out here saying oh, this is a big mistake, guys, don't do this? Was he actually?
Because I think fraud, huge winning issue. No one wants fraud. It's a huge problem in the country. If you could just focus on that, you could rally not only Republicans who are traditionally small government, but you could also bring into the coalition moderate Democrats who want good.
The courts will determine whether the shooting of Alex Preddy was justified, but we can no, they won't, by the way. But we can put to rest the notion that he was a random bystander or a legal observer. He was a radical leftist seeking conflict with law enforcement. This is the Antifa playbook. The guy we're listening to right now.
Oh, okay.
That Ezra Klein has his assistant sucking off under the table while he's doing this interview.
Good governance. And so to me personally, I found it very, very upsetting, because it's like, hey, we have this winning issue, focus on the issue, execute the policy at scale, save the taxpayers' money. You're giving someone a nicely wrapped gift, and you just wish that they would take it. In this case, it didn't happen that way.
It feels to me like the fraud problem for you all is bigger than this. According to a Times analysis across the two terms, Trump has granted clemency to more than 70 allies, donors, and others convicted in fraud.
This guy cried over the, quote, cruel, end quote, Renee Good shooting. Why does this tweet even show up here?
Alex Preddy, the guy who came with a weapon of mass destruction to a protest? Pepe.
Wait. I want mass deportations, and these tactics just seem to be making ISIS's job harder in the long run by creating even more opposition and interference to them carrying out their duties. They should hire more professional agents with higher IQs who are capable of being cunning. This sounds more similar to the guy's position that he just said he had. Oh, I don't think mass hold on. What did this guy say before? Hold on.
Very who want good governance. Traditionally, country. If you could just focus on that, I think fraud, pick up act. I think it's detrimental and free. But if you look at the underlying substance, never going to happen. I think there's part of sending in armored cars with self-deportation, because the employment verification to incentivize self-deportation, because the idea that you could deport people by simply sending in armored cars with ICE agents on the side is delusional. It's never going to happen. I think there's part of the right that wants that kind of.
Whoa, wait. This is Scott Greer, the other guy he was defending. This is not Rufo. Sorry, but it's funny because this guy is saying we just do need to send in ICE agents.
To what? Just in general?
Just to do shit. Well, some guy was like, we should be more strategic, and the Scott Greer guy, who this guy was defending, was saying that, these events are caused just by ICE agents simply doing their job and having to deal with leftists violently disrupting their activities. All the agents involved have years of experience. I don't think that was true, but Republicans are fucking insane. Wait, holy shit. Gavin Newsom has spent $1 billion subsidizing mass border crossing, anti-ICE protests, and a wave of undocumented migrants with AIDS. It's a scandal. Good one. To be fair, that was in April. So 3 months ago. Maybe he's changed his mind.
You can't spend $1 billion anymore?
Yeah.
Macho imagery. But if you look at the underlying substantive, again, you
pick up on the fraud.
And to me, it's also... It's annoying to me personally, because I think fraud, huge winning issue. No one wants fraud. It's a huge problem in the country. If you could just focus on that, you could rally not only Republicans who are traditionally, small government, but you could also bring into the coalition moderate Democrats who want good governance.
And so, to me personally, I found it very fucking deal right now.
Sure, but it's just this. He's just talking about the Trump admin should be focused more on winning issues and should be using better strategy. But how could you ever think the Trump admin would use strategy when Trump himself has shown himself to be a fucking retard who's incapable of thinking strategically about almost anything? This is a fantasy. It's a delusion to think that would have ever been the case.
Fooled by the big Yahoo.
Very upsetting, because it's like, hey, we have this winning issue, focus on the issue, execute the policy at scale, save the taxpayers' money. You're giving someone a nicely wrapped gift, and you just wish that they would take it. In this case, it didn't happen that way.
It feels to me like.
And these guys also cheer on the barbarism the entire time. Barbarianism?
This happened? What is the totality of circumstances that led to this outcome, the shooting death of this?
As more footage emerged, the story shifted. Alex Preddy was an agitator seeking violent conflict with the law. Leftists are slaves to their euphemisms. Alex Preddy wasn't trying to be a decent human. He was trying to disrupt federal law enforcement operations, disobeyed lawful orders, resisted arrest, and, in the melee, caused officers to fear they might be reaching for his gun.
Wait, how does this guy feel about January 6th?
He was a huge supporter of it, obviously.
Oh, okay.
People already like those tweets. By the way, this was obvious even before the video came out today. Preddy was seeking violent conflict with law enforcement, even after damaging his ribs and receiving warnings from his family. The question is what radicalized him and when. YouGov poll. Who's the greatest American in U.S. history? Republicans.
Trump, of course.
24% think Donald Trump. Jesus. Sheesh. Edison at 6%, Tesla at 4%, based.
The fraud problem for you all is bigger than this. According to a Times analysis across the two terms, Trump has granted clemency to more than 70 allies, donors, and others convicted in fraud cases, including Philip Formis, who stole $1.3 billion from Medicare and Medicaid in a fraudulent billing scheme. It was the FBI's largest ever criminal healthcare fraud case against individuals. Trump commuted his 20-year prison term.
You're not going to get me to defend it. I would, in fact,
but I don't see you really attacking it either.
Exactly.
I'll attack it right now.
Okay.
Oh, we'll take it
Shouldn't
now
have done
on your
that.
show.
And in fact,
you shouldn't have done it.
If
It
these
wasn't
people were
good.
convicted of fraud at that scale, 20 years seems like a light prison sentence. I would double it personally. And so, this is
the push I'm making. I recognize you're not going to defend this, but there is this movement on the right now to focus on fraud. You've been very much leading this. Meanwhile, I look at Trump, and he's gutted the machinery of anti-fraud enforcement all across the federal government. He gutted it at the IRS. There's a tremendous amount of fraud in tax returns. We all know that, and huge amounts of money are being stolen under those terms because now the audit capacity has gone way down. He gutted inspectors general across the federal government, the people seeing what is happening inside these organizations. He destroyed the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, which did a lot of anti-fraud work. Debatable. I recognize we would debate it, but what I don't think is debatable is that Trump and this administration have sort of systematically gone across the federal government and taken apart parts of the government that are supposed to watch if the government itself is committing fraud.
He doesn't care.
And if
He likes
the
that.
taxpayers
That's good to him.
and
He thinks
others
it's good.
are.
He thinks
I
it's good,
look
Ezra.
at the country right now, and I see Donald Trump has you like using piracy around the Somalis. I think of the Trump and the Trump family as pirates. I think that they are looting the country for their benefit. I think that that's what the Qatari plane is. I think that's what the crypto investments are. I think that's how Trump and his family have increased their net worth by billions of dollars. And I'm not saying you support it, but I don't understand how you think you're going to have a right that is doing good governance and that is taking these things institutionally seriously and have that be what is happening at the very top.
Sure. And let's take pardons as the most concrete example.
Biden did a bunch.
Yes, I agree. I think you and I would agree. And I'm political, but in a sense, not partisan in that way. I'm not going to reflexively defend every decision by someone in my camp or the president of the United States. And in fact, a lot of those pardons, ill-advised, shouldn't have done it. And because in the reporting that I've read, a number of those individuals had also been putting money into various lobbies and various attempts to influence and various, campaign funds or committee funds or however the finances work. You create a perception of corruption that is not good and does, in some ways, undercut the good work of combating systematic social service fraud as a whole. But from my point of view and how I have to look at it is, okay, you live in an imperfect world. You don't have ultimate control. My influence is great on the things I care about, on DEI, on higher education, defunding NPR, whatever. Go down the list of
NPR.
You've been very fortunate.
But the
that was one of the top political things of all of these you can think of for why I would support Trump. Defunding NPR was one of the big important. Really? That's how petty. That's how much of a fucking loser you are. Seriously.
The implicit premise of your criticism, which again I take seriously, and I think it's a fair criticism, is therefore you should give up, you should turn against the good work that's being done. It's kind of canceled out or invalidated because of something that's happening over here. And my personal policy is,
let them fuck around a little bit.
Where there's necessary criticism, I'll give the criticism, but I'm not going to stop to work in that little sphere of influence that I have to do good. And so, I'm kind of walking the line, right, where I will issue the criticism as necessary, and if that reduces my influence in a certain regard, I'm willing to accept it. And while I would certainly, speak out against, I think the crypto thing was just,
and it is ongoing.
It's ongoing, yeah.
Yeah, their crypto plays are ongoing.
Not a big deal, though. It's okay. It's okay. It's okay.
Yeah, and
it's bad.
At the end of the
What do you
day,
say?
when I sit down in my office, at 7:30 a.m. every morning, I'm like, all right, how can we win? How can we move the ball forward? How can we do good policy? And ultimately, at the end of the day, that's all that's within my control. And that's the attitude that I bring to the fight.
I think you underestimate yourself. The point I'm making is,
well, explain it to me.
The point I'm making is actually a little bit even larger than you. Look, the one reason I have you here for this conversation is I think you're very, very good at what you do. I think you're probably the most successful activist, certainly right-wing activist of this era.
But maybe overall, you're saying?
Huh?
Maybe overall, maybe left and right, in general.
Maybe, right?
I'll take it.
And look, you and I are not going to agree on a million things, right? My point is not to convert you to my politics. I'm not going to do that.
You should try. I mean, why not? I'm trying to convert you.
Listen, we talk.
Yeah.
But I think that the right's inability to hold itself to certain epistemological or institutional standards of, let's not call it neutrality, let's call it impartiality at the institutional level, at the federal government level, what the right is accepting that Donald Trump is doing is insane in my view.
Okay.
And
Ezra keeps thinking that this guy is not aware of what they're accepting and what's happening. And Ezra's trying to warn him about what's going on. There's got to be a fucking comic you can make in a way that's not just a rape joke, because that's all I can think of. But he's watching the frat guy pouring all the GHB powder. I don't know how you take GHB. But he's like, dude, don't you realize that if you give your girlfriend that drink that she's going to pass out? How are you going to have sex with her then? I can't imagine how fucking clueless he is. It's crazy to me.
Epistemological standards and Nick Shirley stuff is, and some of your things in my view, which go, again, I think you're careful in the body and then not always in the promotion and the weaponization of it.
Why do you think that? You're so careful in in your theory, but you get a little bit sloppy when you're promoting it publicly. No, he's not. It's all intentional. How do you not notice that it's all intentional? What do you...
Being careful in the
written
pieces that are defensible, but I think I take the rhetorical flourish too far.
And then beyond you, I think there's a generalized view that we need to unleash these passions. There's been too much that has been unsayable, and we need to make sure we can say it all again. And the result of this is like a hydraulic process, not like some future result, but a current result. Where when I look at the Spotify rankings, the right of center figures on the top have become highly conspiratorial, and there are figures like Fuentes Rising, and we need a strong right in this country.
Ezra Klein attacked Sam Harris and essentially accused him of racism for not having enough black guests on his podcast, and then gave Chris Rufo the most softball and deferential interview I could have ever imagined. It's actually bizarre. Something is really off about it. Chris Rufo tweets, "Huh."
That's it?
What?
He just says, "Huh?"
No, what? He tweets the GigaChat picture because he knows he fucking played him again. It's always them playing us.
Country.
I'd ask you a question then. Mm-hmm. Has the New York Times editorial line, right? The editorial line, has it moved more in my direction since 2020, or have I moved more in its direction since 2020?
I'm not sure the way you have moved since 2020.
I haven't moved at all.
Okay.
So if I'm the baseline.
So I think you're saying it's moved in your direction.
Of course.
Okay.
You look at the big piece on DEI, you had editorialists saying that I was, some sort of villain on DEI.
Let's agree. Let's agree you've won some fights.
Moves back.
Let's agree you've won some fights.
Yeah.
I'm saying that they're like the right, in my view, right, as somebody who I think actually has a good record of criticizing my own, right? I pushed Joe Biden to, when that was like a much more dangerous thing for me to do.
Agreed.
I wrote Abundance, which is entirely a critique of democratic governance. And where the right has gone, I think is not going to work. And what's interesting to me about you,
I think this is the crux of my discussion with Ezra Klein. The left has sought to tarnish the right as a white nationalist movement, but as Klein concedes, it is completely reasonable to, quote, worry about large-scale, rapid demographic change, end quote. This is literally like a verbatim white nationalist talking point. Large-scale, rapid demographic change. Why would you even use this framing? Like, it's just...
right now is I'll watch your show and I can see you and your co-host wrestling with these questions.
Sure.
Right. I don't think you're comfortable.
Oh my God.
Ultimately, there's like two problems that I see the right having that it really does not know how to solve. One problem is its attentional sphere.
Yes.
Is pathological.
Parts of it are. Yeah.
Parts of it are. And it doesn't have a lot of institutional strength there. And the second is that you cannot challenge Donald Trump. You can sort of say some things he's doing you don't like, maybe you wouldn't fully support, but Donald Trump is the Sun King and he has to be obeyed, or if you go too hard and he's shown his ability to do it, if you go too hard, you get like pushed out in a way maybe you can't come back from. And those two things are allowing a tremendous amount of bad ideas, of actual corruption, of just institutional and non-institutional rot to occur. And like we're all going to pay for it because right now we're all living under right-wing governance. So I don't want to worry about this, right? I don't need this. My point is not you should become a liberal, but the right has some real issues.
He's going to yell at Ezra Klein.
I would agree that the right has some real challenges. And this is universal, right? There's no entirely virtuous, effective, disciplined political movement. Every political movement has a certain fermentation, a certain amount of internal conflict. You have to figure out how to resolve disputes, settle questions. And what I've tried to do, especially in the last, say, year and a half since Trump has become president again, is bring a lot of those conversations into the open. And I think that while there are these real challenges, the epistemological machine of the right has some real weak spots, some real flaws, some real vulnerabilities. While Trump's kind of highly individualized, charismatic presidency that is charismatic rather than legal, rational, or traditional, the Max Weber triangle of legitimacy and authority. The reality is that, okay, then let's solve it. This is the conversation we need to have. These are the problems we need to grapple with. The charismatic leadership has enormous benefits. It also creates a series of underlying problems to solve. But I think that all of these can be resolved productively. I think the people in charge of the conservative institutions still, in general, have good epistemological judgment, intuitions, attitudes. And I think that politics moves forward. And I think actually after Trump is in his last term. Depending on how things go with the House, this might be the really last kind of truly effective moment for the Trump presidency. And then we ask the next question. And so the reality is that you have to move forward. You have to work within imperfect conditions.
One of my critiques of the right now, and I have my own of the left, and I've talked about many of them, but I think the right likes to talk about virtue and doesn't insist on it. And virtue, to go back to what we were talking about around telos and your telos, is very much in part about restraining the passions and channeling them productively.
Doesn't care.
There's a lot of talk about virtue, but the people who are leaders on the right, Donald Trump very much included, are not virtuous often. And if they have enough power, that is looked past. If they have enough strength to their passions, that is fine. And similarly in the informational sphere, in the attentional sphere, there is a lot of playing with stories that are designed, like mimetically constructed, to arouse very, very, very base passions. So stories are often much more complicated, if they're true, beneath them. And there's a view that can be channeled in the right direction. And I think the opposite is happening, that in fact, the people who are restrained are really losing out in the right attentional sphere, because it's this constant, you can't get hurt if you're not now playing this game of incredibly weaponized, like explosive allegations, which of course is going where that ultimately always goes, which is towards anti-Semitic conspiracy theories, like the oldest intentional move in the book.
God. You're raising, I think, a really important philosophical question, and the conservative tradition offers a lot of good debate discourse on this question. The question is this: you have what we might say Aristotelian virtue or Christian virtue, and then Machiavellian virtù, which is it's the same word but a totally different conception. And for Machiavelli, virtue, the political virtue, was the virtue of how to win power, how to maintain stability, and in his book on republics, how to have a flourishing republic, which often requires cunning, ambition, design. And so politics is always a conversation between virtue and virtu. And you're essentially reconciling means and ends. And there are people who will argue, academics in particular, even those on the right, well, we need to have deontological principles that you can make, the means always have to be 100% pure towards 100% pure ends. And I laugh. It's like, well, only an academic could really make such a case, because the reality is that in politics, it's an imperfect world, and you're constantly balancing means and ends. You're constantly taking the measure of virtu and virtue, and so you have to figure that out. You have to figure out where you're personally comfortable, where you personally can feel that your work is justified, and then as a movement, as a whole, this is a constant negotiation. And look, in my mind, political leaders are not your friends. Political leaders are not your priest. Political leaders are kind of blunt instruments. Political leaders are means to an end. And there's no easy answer there. There's no immediate answer there. But what I would say is that those are the people that are my compatriots, the people that I'm fighting every day alongside and along with, are high integrity people, very smart people, conservative institutionalists who understand the moment, who understand that we need to kind of deliver tangible political victories. We can't retreat just to abstract speculation, and who, look, we're playing the game. And in my view, the game is simultaneously to improve our own capacities, but also to win in the arena. And so I oftentimes, and this conversation is interesting, because oftentimes you're moving forward. All right, what are we going to do? How are we going to hit this? Where are we going to push next? What kind of victory is available? And you have to do that knowing that the system you're operating in is littered with imperfections. And again, at the end of the day, my calculation is, I'm very mindful, and even try to be, some people wouldn't believe this, try to even be humble as to the little part of the world that I can influence. And I think I've changed it for the better. I think institutions that I'm working with are improving over time. And I think this epistemological question and the individual charismatic question are questions that can be and will be resolved in the, say, short to medium term.
I'll leave it there. I really appreciate you doing this conversation. Always our final question. What are 3 books you'd recommend to the audience?
Okay, so we're going to do 3 books from Rufo's personal conservative canon. The first I would recommend is a book by my mentor, John Marini, Claremont Institute scholar, called Unmasking the Administrative State, which I think has helped me more than anything understand the deeper philosophical and political underpinnings of our modern dilemma. The second book that I think all conservatives should read and all liberals should read is a biography by Stacy Schiff called The Revolutionary, which is a biography of the American founder Samuel Adams. And Adams is the most political founder. I think he kind of clarifies, for example, all the questions that we've been talking about propaganda, about passion, about institutions, about political change. He's the kind of key and the forgotten founder, really. He's been downgraded for centuries now, but I think he's actually the most important founder. And then, third, I would recommend a number of books by the kind of conservative journalist, former NYU professor, James Burnham. Wrote a book called Managerial Revolution, another called The Machiavellians, another called Suicide of the West. And for me, Burnham is someone who has the kind of sophisticated analysis that helps illuminate these questions. His work is quite good and might even be interesting for people who don't share my political
But which book
ambitions.
of his would you start with?
I would start with Managerial Revolution, again, because it kind of describes, it's in the 1940s, it's unbelievable. You read it now, and he's describing the world we live in, but he's describing it from a point of kind of optimism, American optimism, but he already saw some of the problems that were starting to emerge.
Chris Rufo, thank you very much.
Thank you.
I canceled it. Nice. Okay.
Thoughts?
It's just pure slop.
You should get ice cream today.
True.
I think you deserve it. You're kind of like Joe Biden in that regard.
Yeah. Somebody linked a 1 minute of Sunslap to play us out.
To call District 1. Oh, okay.
Hank Bet David subscribed to NBC News just so he could have Steve Kornacki, Mr. Khaki, read his goddamn name out in his goddamn statement about being a numbers guy in the middle of a serious broadcast. What's funny is he has no clue what this is. Okay.
So let's pick up right where we left off. Well, I can't give you the exact answer to that because I'm not the decision desk. But what the decision desk has told us, and if you were watching, you might have seen this earlier from Adam Naboa relaying an update that they wanted to see more vote. They were talking about seeing more than 80% of the vote. Thank you, Hank B, for the question.
Thank you, Hank Bet David, for the question. This is our impact, man.
Hassan reacts to one of his very obvious community members subscribing to NBC News just to say that they're a numbers guy. Y'all be so dedicated. Good one. Read the comments here. I don't know if I can without an archive link or whatever, because I don't. And now it's not even fucking loading.
Smash it.
The comment section is closed. And I can't. The web page does not work for me. Oh wait, nope. There we go. Hold on. Oh, sorry. Maybe it needed to be on this monitor. Christopher Ruvo in his own comment section. Good one, dude. Good propaganda. I enjoyed this conversation with Ezra, especially the place where he provided pointed criticisms. Although there was a temptation for all of us to retreat to our various corners, it's better for the country to have a rational right and a rational left that can engage. God, this reminds me of the comments on my old fucking videos talking to these Daily Wire people. I appreciate your comment here and your call for rational dialogue. You were the first public thinker who challenged my assumptions about conservative thinkers. You reminded me that it's possible to disagree while still recognize intelligence, good faith, and nuance. Unreal. I wonder how an average like New York Times like listeners, viewers, like do lib left people feel like they're represented by shows like this, or do they get like super triggered? I have no idea. Can I not see anything, or all? Really enjoyed this interview and found it highly informative on multiple levels. Rufo squirmed out of any real accounting for the Trump admin's many, many outrageous ethical transgressions. True. The leader of your movement, our corrupt and criminal president, one of the most despicable human beings ever. True. This guy got mad about the idpol section.
If you had to fight a moose or a bear, which one would you rather fight?
A moose or a bear? I don't know, probably a moose?
I think I'm going bear.
Okay.
I don't think you could kill a moose, man.
I don't know if you could kill a bear.
Yeah, I don't know. That's a tough one, huh?
What is the moose is going to kill you? I guess he could trample you, and he could
He's got antlers too.
Use the antlers. But if a bear touches you with any of its hands, I'm pretty sure you're just dead.
Yeah, those are razors.
Well, for razors, I guess, but they're also huge, and he'll go through your entire body with nothing.
But do you
with
know
no
how big
force.
a moose is, though?
Yeah, but bears are fucking big too.
Well, it depends on which bear. You didn't ask.
Well, it depends on
Checkmate.
which moose you didn't ask. What about a child moose?
Okay, why is it always children with you?
Well, we're talking about killing things, so.
Okay, let's say it's a black bear versus a moose. Does that change your
I
answer?
don't remember which bears are the most.
Black
violent
bears are the bitch bears. They're the smallest ones.
Really?
Yeah. I'd rather fight a black bear, but I would probably rather fight a moose than a brown bear.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, I'm leaving.
Right.
I'll be back tomorrow. Stay safe.
Get some ice cream.
I get so much ice cream. Sorry, I was so close on this to having everything in the play log. I felt like I just wanted to get everything, which I do. I have everything now. I just need to assess this Bahamut dude. And then I have every single thing in this play, like, and all the achievements, because fuck it, why not? We'll do the 4x3 before we leave. Fuck it. You're missing the Shimmer combat thing? I think I can only do that after I beat the DLC. Pair, Flint, Suit, Bout, Swipe, Message, Game, Tinder, Match. Okay, things that you can do on Tinder. You can swipe, message, or match. But then you've got Tinder, Flint, and Match. Okay, so match is the word. And then you've got a pair, a suit, and a match. I guess something to do with cards, right? Do you have match cards? I know you can have a pair, you can have cards of the same suit, and then about a game or a match. Oh, yeah, true, that's what it is. Oh, things that go together well. Ooh, easy. Crushed it. Move chat, you dingling. Oh, get fucked. All right, be careful. I love you guys.